Chapter 341, An Unexpected Result. Listening to Yi Qi's words, Yi Han got suspicious. After all, he saw the horrible scene of his invulnerability with his own eyes back then. However, because he had not seen many martial artists, he had some doubts. Was it true that Mr. Zhang's position in the martial arts world was really not high? Yi Han couldn't figure it out, so he kept silent. Soon, the car reached the parking lot halfway up the mountain. The driver, Yi Han, and Yi Qi got off the car and walked up the stone steps to the mountain top. Seeing all kinds of luxury cars parked on the way, Yi Han became a little diffident, yet he was also very nervous and excited. After all, he would see a martial artists gathering soon. Yi Qi's driver was a peak-strength warrior and he was taking the lead to go up. Before they had walked a long distance, another extended version of the Rolls-Royce Phantom entered the parking lot. After the car was parked, the driver didn't move. The man in a white shirt and black suit hurried down from the front passenger seat and opened the rear door. 4 people got out of the car. They were Hong Kitao, Tang Jie, Hong Li and Ninai. "Let's go." Hong Kitao waved his hand and took the lead. Tang Jie, who was in sportswear, elegantly held Hong Kitao's arm. Hong Li and Ninai followed them hand in hand. "Dad, what kind of gathering will we see here today?" Hong Li asked with curiosity. "A martial artists gathering." "Oh." Hong Li understood and nodded. Then, he looked at Ninai and said, "Ninai, have you seen any martial artists yet?" "No, I haven't." "You mean those who learn martial arts?" Ninai asked with curiosity. "Yes, martial artists are those who can practice kung fu, just as Golden Bell Cocoon, Tai Chi, 8 diagrams palm, etc." Hong Li, who didn't know much of that circle, tried to explain to her as a professional, "Does such kind of kung fu really exist?" "Of course, those fancy movements we usually see in our normal lives are just for performance. A real martial artist is much more powerful than that. Some martial artists still master Qigong. Even a flower would be a hidden weapon in their hands." Hong Li spoke while moving his hands. "It's amazing." Ninai stuck her tongue out, marveled by the world she was in. "Let's take a look today. When there are battles between the martial artists later on, I'll take you there to have fun." Hong Li smiled casually. Hearing his words, Hong Kitao frowned slightly and looked at him, saying, "I've told you before that we should revere martial artists. You want to have fun there? Do you think that those martial artists will fight face to face? Many great masters can even kill people before you see it, so don't go to watch their battles in private. That's supernatural." Hong Li felt that his father was exaggerating things. How could they kill people without being seen? Could they chop somebody's head from 1,000 miles away? "You must be kidding. Just listen to your dad," Tang Jie said. "You don't have any contact with those people, so you don't know that the martial arts world is even darker compared to the ordinary society. Given your ability, you'd better not get involved." "Yes, Auntie Tang, I'll tell Hong Li not to watch their battles in private." Ninai nodded and replied. Tang Jie looked at Ninai with satisfaction. Tang Jie was very satisfied with her family and character. As the legitimate daughter in a big family, she loved Hong Li wholeheartedly and always acted as a very obedient future daughter-in-law. "We may need to stay in Hong Kong for a while this time. We'll ask for the opinions of the 2 kids before going to talk about the engagement with Ninai's family." While thinking about it, Tang Jie smiled at Ninai. "Oh my, we're just halfway there. I'm exhausted." Hong Li looked up at the top of the mountain and panted while speaking. "I told you to exercise more at ordinary times, but you didn't listen." Tang Jie rolled her eyes to Hong Li and said, "All you do is have fun all day long. Young people like you are all sub-healthy. Look at your dad and me, we aren't tired at all. How could a young man be so weak?" "I didn't sleep well last night." Hong Li wagged his head while speaking. As soon as he said that, Ninai's face turned red. Her shyness explained why Hong Li didn't sleep well the previous night. It was clearly because they had spent too much time in bed. Seeing Ninai become so shy, Hong Li smiled embarrassedly and said, "I do sports regularly. Ninai always urges me to swim and go jogging with her." Hearing those words, Tang Jie smiled and glanced at Ninai, saying, "With Ninai by your side, your dad and I will rest assured. After a while, we'll go to Ninai's family to formally propose your marriage and get this thing settled. Xiao Li, you shouldn't go out to have fun all day long. Be a mature man and focus on the business. Hey, my two brothers can make money for you. As for me, I want to be a director and make some movies," Hong Li said casually. "All right, let's go there and say hello." They arrived at the platform while speaking. Hong Kitao reminded them before leading them to the direction of the chairs inside. On their way, many people recognized that big shot in the entertainment circle of Hong Kong, and they all said hello to him with smiles. After all, such rich people would also be patrons of martial artists, and there would be cooperation between them sometimes. Therefore, the martial artists were very polite to those rich people. There were also many other wealthy businessmen. Since they were in the same circle and knew each other, they were willing to say hello. When Hong Kitao was greeting other people, Hong Li and Ninai became quiet and looked around with curiosity. They went all the way to the main seats. Hong Kitao greeted Jiang Zongyao with hands folded in front and said enthusiastically, "Master Jiang, nice to meet you." "Mr. Hong," Jiang Zongyao smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Let me introduce him. This is Master Gu, Xuanhuan. He's going to be a heaven stage master, a senior to us." The guardian martial artists next to Hong Kitao were stunned by those words. Heaven stage master. That represents an incomparable fighting capacity. Although he hasn't reached that stage, he's going to make a breakthrough, indicating that it is just around the corner. Yet he's still at the stage of peak strength. It is no exaggeration to say that this Master Ge here can fight with him for 8 rounds even with only one hand. Those words made Hong Kitao's guardian martial artists become respectful. However, when Ninai, who was next to Hong Li, took a good look at Xuanhuan, she was slightly stunned and her eyes lit up. Even her hand began to tremble in Hong Li's hand. Hong Kitao's eyes also slightly lit up. Since he knew the meaning of being a heaven stage master, he became more enthusiastic and greeted him with his hands folded in front, saying with a smile, "Master Gu, nice to meet you." Xuanhuan contemptuously responded with a nasal sound. That made Hong Kitao feel somewhat unhappy and helpless deep inside. It seemed that he was a powerful man in front of other people, but in the upper-class circle of martial artists, they really didn't take him seriously. However, he was not afraid, because martial arts masters would also be scared of people such as him who had a certain influence in society. They knew that they might also have connections with some more powerful martial artists, and, even if they didn't, provoking such people as Hong Kitao would also cause the National Security Agency to deal with the situation. There were many sects and family forces in the vast Hua nation. However, as a special department, the National Security Agency still had an incomparable power, being the home to endless great masters. Just because of the existence of such a department, the martial arts world didn't dare to cause trouble in society. It was conceivable that if no one restricted them, society would not be peaceful at all. After responding, Xuanhuan didn't care about Hong Kitao or Tang Jie at all. Instead, he began to stare at Ninai behind them. Hong Kitao found it so weird. What does that mean? Tang Jie was stunned and began to think, could it be that Master Ge fancies beautiful girls and he fell for Ninai? That can't happen. Tang Jie was a little anxious, thinking that if Master Ge had really taken a fancy to Ninai and required something, who would stand up to settle this, Hong Kitao or her? "Are you called Ran Ninai?" Xuanhuan asked calmly. "Yes." Ninai nodded lightly. Xuanhuan suddenly sneered. He looked at Hong Li and said, "So you're Hong Li?" Hong Kitao's heart skipped a beat. Oh no. There must be something here. They must have done something that offended Master Gu. Xuanhuan's words also made the crowd stop chatting and look over. Under everyone's attention, Hong Li felt that his blood had frozen. but he still braced himself to say, "I'm Hong Li, Master Gu." Then, Hong Kitao interrupted him, "This is my son and his girlfriend. Did they do anything that has offended you, Master Gu? Do you want the answer? Just ask your precious son." Guiqun looked at Hong Li coldly while speaking. Hong Li suddenly felt an enormous pressure, as if even the air was pressing against him. He couldn't breathe smoothly and his hands and feet couldn't stop trembling. He was panic-stricken. Just like a fish without water, he felt suffocated. It turns out that martial artists are really overwhelming. At that moment, Hong Li finally felt the pressure from a martial artist. He knew that his life and death could be decided in the blink of an eye. "Master Gu, please enlighten us. If my son has done anything to offend you, I will hold a banquet to apologize and give a satisfactory answer to you," Hong Kitao said quickly, as he was also very nervous. Then, Guiqun stopped his gaze. Hong Li felt relieved immediately and the pressure that made him feel like suffocating had also dissipated. "All right then, I'll explain." Guiqun looked at Hong Kitao while saying coldly, "It seems that my nephew Gu Pengfing and your son's current girlfriend had a story." As soon as he said that, everyone present was surprised. Did Hong Li steal his nephew's girlfriend? The facial expressions of Hong Kitao and Tang Jie also changed. Ninai bit her lower lip badly after seeing that. Guiqun words were too ambiguous, which would make others misunderstand her and take her for a skittish woman who could be with any man when tempted. She was very scared and helpless deep inside, knowing that she was not qualified to interject. However, she wanted to speak the truth. Fortunately, Hong Li was a responsible man. He gritted his teeth and said, "There is nothing between them. It's like this. When I was pursuing Ninai, Gu Pengfing was also doing the same thing. Later, Ninai decided to be my girlfriend, so he wanted to play some tricks. Then I hired some people to break his leg. That's it." Chapter 342, He's Really Here. After Hong Li said that, everyone present understood. It was caused by some young men's jealousy. Everyone was talking about it in a low voice. Whether that matter was serious or not would depend on Guiqun attitude. However, Hong Kitao felt relieved after hearing the words. That was not a big deal in his view, but it was true that his son did break his nephew's leg. Although it would take that young man only a while to recover, his uncle was Master Gu after all, so it was better to apologize. After thinking about it, Hong Kitao nodded to Guiqun and said, "Master Gu, I'm so sorry. My son is young and ignorant, but I'll definitely give you a satisfactory answer." He thought that it would just cost him some money to apologize to him, for which he didn't care at all. However, Guiqun following words put him on tenterhooks. "A satisfactory answer?" Guiqun sneered, then he stared at Hong Kitao while speaking. "What do you mean by that? Money? I don't need it. I will severely punish him for this matter. No one in this world can hurt the Hongs." Hong Kitao's pupils shrank slightly, feeling that Guiqun was about to make some unreasonable requests. However, he was inferior to him to a great degree on such an occasion. Although he wasn't happy deep inside, he still kept smiling and said, "What do you want, Master Gu? We can negotiate." "How dare you think about negotiating with me?" Guiqun didn't care about his feelings at all and answered coldly. Swish. That made Hong Kitao completely lose face and his smile gradually dissipated. Looking at Guiqun, he didn't know what to do at the moment. He felt very worried because if Guiqun beat them, they definitely wouldn't end up well. What should I do? Looking at Guiqun, whose gaze was getting colder and colder, Hong Kitao got a little nervous and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Just when he couldn't bear the pressure anymore, Jiang Zongyao, who was standing nearby, opened his mouth. He looked at Guiqun and smiled, saying, "Master Gu, I think Mr. Hong will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. It's better for you to talk about it afterwards." "Humphrey," Guiqun snorted, then he significantly looked at Ninai, who was behind them, and said, "It's not impossible to talk about this afterwards." Seeing him like that, Hong Kitao and the others all felt that things wouldn't be simple. It seemed that his goal was Ninai. Is it that he wants to take Ninai away for Gapengfing? Mr. Hong, please go ahead and sit for a while. Jiang Zongyao looked at Hong Kitao and said calmly. Okay. Hong Kitao nodded and led the others to the chairs nearby. The people who knew him along the way all avoided him like the plague. After all, being close to Hong Kitao at that moment would possibly offend Master Gu. After they walked to the area and sat down, Gequanlong began to chat casually, which attracted people's attention. He looked at Jiang Zongyao and said, Master Jiang, I heard that you've been promoted to be Great Deacon of the National Security Agency. Yes. Speaking of that, Jiang Zongyao couldn't help but smile. He said, I was so lucky some time ago that I made a breakthrough when performing a task. Making a breakthrough isn't a matter of luck, it's related to your strength. Gequanlong shook his head and said, Master Jiang, since you're already a great deacon now, you'll be better off in the future. It won't be difficult for you to reach the heaven stage. The heaven stage is still too far away for me. I'm not like you, Master Gu. You'll break through to the heaven stage sometime soon, right? Jiang Zongyao said with a smile. Sometime soon? Gequanlong laughed. Then he put a cup of tea in his hand, opened his palm and moved up a little. All people present looked at him carefully for several seconds and then they were surprised. The cup was just floating over Gequanlong's palm and it was 1 centimeter apart. What? All the martial artists' eyes widened and they really couldn't believe it. He can release his chi, which means that he has already reached the heaven stage. Heaven stage masters could release a little chi, and after they developed further into Wudao Grand Masters, they could completely release their chi. The release of chi meant that one's fighting capacity had been improved by more than one level. Such movements in novels as the 18 palm attacks to defeat dragons and the 6 veins sword, which were legendary in ordinary people's eyes, were not rare at all for Wudao Grand Masters. They also had many similar moves that could hurt people with the release of chi. Jiang Zongyao suddenly stood up and looked at Gequanlong while asking, Master Gu, are you already a heaven stage master? Gequanlong nodded lightly. After drinking some tea, he put the cup back and said lightly, the day before yesterday, I made a breakthrough and reached the heaven stage, but I haven't been able to master this power thoroughly, thus, I still need to practice for a while. Congratulations to Master Gu to have reached the heaven stage. Jiang Zongyao hurriedly bent down and said with great enthusiasm, Congratulations, Master Gu. Master Gu is a real hero in the martial arts world. Given Master Gu's martial arts talent, he'll surely be a Wudao Grand Master in the future and an upper-level figure in the martial arts world. Those compliments made Gequanlong very pleased. He went there just to show off, didn't he? With all the people present, the martial arts world of Hong Kong would know that Gequanlong had already become a heaven stage master in just a few days. However, Hong Kitao, who was sitting at the back, felt at a loss. Earlier, he thought about using his connections to deal with that matter, but such news really made him desperate. Irritating a heaven stage master isn't something good. What should I do? Hong Kitao had a headache and regretted deep inside. I shouldn't have come here today. If he hadn't gone there, he wouldn't have encountered such a thing. However, if he really hadn't attended, would Gequanlong just let it go? Although Hong Kitao had never seen him before, he had heard that Master Gu was narrow-minded and vindictive. Regardless of not attending that day, Master Gu would have also taken his men to their families someday. This is really a headache. Hong Kitao felt that things were getting a bit tricky. Yi Chi and Yi Han were sitting in a corner on the other side. Yi Chi said in Yi Han's ear, Did you see that? That is what a master should be. He's a real hero in the martial arts world. I see. Yi Han sighed lightly. He had no connection with the martial arts world, neither did he know about such things. Maybe Mr. Zhang was not as powerful as he imagined, but he didn't regret it, because no matter what, he had already gotten acquainted with a person in that circle. After people complimented him for a long time, a dark-skinned man, who was in his 40s, asked, Master Gu, I have been stuck on the peak of the profound stage for 5 years, but I still don't have any clue how to improve. Can you enlighten me? Thanks in advance. Xuanhuan glanced at him. That man was named Huang Qi and they had known each other for nearly 10 years. After thinking about it, Xuanhuan said, "Then I will simply explain it to you." Once he said that, the eyes of Huang Qi, Mu Wu and the others all lit up and they were all ears. The point is you need to have the power of understanding. Xuanhuan said slowly, only when you understand its essence, can you make a breakthrough and reach the next stage. As for how long it will take, it's all up to your talent. Right. Jiang Zongyao nodded and echoed, talent is required to be a martial arts master. Just as Emperor King, he had great talent for comprehension, which allowed him to constantly make breakthroughs. People like Emperor King are legendary after all and we can't be compared with them. If you don't have such a talent, you should experience more and fight more, Xuanhuan said with emotion. Right. Mu Wu suddenly looked at Jiang Zongyao and asked, Master Jiang, I heard that you're going to fight with someone here today, right? Is your opponent Master Gu? Oh? Xuanhuan looked at Jiang Zongyao. How could I be Master Gu's opponent? Jiang Zongyao hurriedly waved his hand and said, it's just a nobody who has just reached the profound stage, yet he is quite arrogant, so this time, I'll show him that there are lots of people more powerful than him in this world. Ha ha ha, how come a man that has just reached the profound stage dares to be arrogant in front of Master Jiang? He really needs to be taught a lesson. I wonder who this person is. Huang Qi laughed while speaking. Just then, all people's attention was focused on Jiang Zongyao. Who will be the profound stage master that will be bullied later? I didn't ask about his name, but I know he's just a young man who's running a restaurant. Let's just call him Master Jiang of New Moon Bay. Jiang Zongyao replied casually. Kaboom! It was like a thunderbolt out of a clear sky for Yi Han. A young man who's running a restaurant. Master Jiang of New Moon Bay, isn't that Mr. Jiang? Watching everyone laughing around him along with Jiang Zongyao's contempt, Yi Han felt extremely defeated deep inside. It turns out that Mr. Jiang's position in the martial arts world is quite low. When will that guy arrive? Mu Wu asked. He should be here soon, I just sent someone to call him. Jiang Zongyao took a look at the phone just when it began to ring. He answered it and said a few words before hanging up. Then a sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth. He said, he's coming. It seems that we'll enjoy a good show today. I don't think so. This will only be a unilateral abuse. How can a young man who has just reached the profound stage fight against Master Jiang? Right, Master Jiang, don't end the battle so soon later on. First, let him have a taste of fear. People's discussions made Yi Han feel more uncomfortable deep inside. In their eyes, Mr. Jiang is just like a lamb that is waiting to be killed. But, he felt that he was somewhat related with Mr. Jiang, so he was wondering if he should call secretly and tell him not to come. After thinking about it, he denied the idea. Even if he didn't come today, Master Jiang would possibly go to find him tomorrow. It seems that this battle will be inevitable and Mr. Jiang will be bullied badly. Yi Han sighed deep inside. This also made the rich people present rather excited. They hadn't expected that they would soon watch a duel which was usually only accessible to martial artists. Even if it is a unilateral abuse, it'll be an eye-opener and worthwhile. In the meantime, at the parking lot on the hillside, a Land Rover slowly stopped. Bang, bang, bang. After the car doors were opened and then closed, Zhao Feng walked down from the driver's seat, Zhang Han from the front passenger seat and Dai from the back passenger seat. Two men and a gorilla walked leisurely to the mountain top. Zhang Han had almost forgotten the trip to Mount Yunding on that day. He had just finished cooking lunch in the restaurant and hadn't had time to eat before a young man went to the place to invite him, and then he suddenly thought of it. Fortunately, Zhang Li and Liu King were at the restaurant, so he asked Meng Meng to play with them for a while and then went to the mountain with Zhao Feng and Dai. I just knew that there would be martial artists gatherings here, Master. Will Dai fight in a while? Do you need my help? Zhao Feng glanced at the mountain top and asked. You won't be of any help. Zhang Han shook his head with a smile and said, you've just started cultivating and you're developing fast with inward strength. However, your natural disposition is ordinary and developing too fast may backfire, so you should lay a good foundation first, which will be good for future cultivation. That man is also a chi strength master. Can Dai beat him? Zhao Feng asked. Oh, whoa. Dai's eyes widened and it pushed Zhao Feng heavily. What did you say? I can't beat him? Just wait and see, I'll crush his chest with my fist. Okay, I was wrong, Dai, you can beat him, Zhao Feng said hurriedly. Dai finally stopped. Well, master, why won't you do this in person? Zhao Feng asked with curiosity. He didn't understand why his master was so powerful but rarely fought, and he seemed to have no interest in that kind of battles. To deal with such small potatoes, Dai is more than enough. Zhang Han smiled and said, Dai needs practice to inspire his fighting instinct. Only through continuous fighting can he become more powerful. Dai could only use brute force and knew nothing about fighting skills. Only in that way could he gradually improve. He was bound to step into the cultivation world in the future, where the law of the jungle prevailed, thus fighting skills would definitely be needed. Prior to that, Zhang Han would bring Dai or Little Hai to practice whenever there was a chance. Only fighting could stimulate their potential, and only when their potential was constantly stimulated, would they possibly be awakened and get some talent in the future. That was a truth not only for beasts, but also for human beings. The cultivation world was unfair, where some talents were born with a supernatural power, while those who were not talented could only get a chance by fighting continuously. Oh. After hearing the words, Zhao Feng nodded. He finally understood that in his master's eyes, Master Jiang was just a tool for Dai to practice with. Hey? Zhao Feng suddenly felt it very strange and asked, Master, since Dai alone can beat him, why did you come? Only Dai and I would be enough. Zhang Han found that it was so hard to explain to him, so he simply said, this is a gathering for all martial artists. Ah? Oh, I got it. Zhao Feng thought for a while and his eyes lit up. This is a gathering for all martial artists, so Master Jiang's friends will be there, too. If there's someone that day I can't beat down, Master will fight him instead. So the Master came with us, to make us feel secure. Thinking that he might see his master fight against others, Zhao Feng felt goosebumps rise. That would be soul-stirring. He clearly remembered that master went from the ground to a 10-meter high tree in the blink of an eye, and then, he returned to the original position from the tree in an instant. Seeing that he was moving as fast as lightning, Zhao Feng felt he was awesome. They reached the platform on the mountain top while talking. As soon as they got there, all people who were sitting on the chairs at the back looked over. Some were curious, some were surprised, and others were indifferent. Some ridiculed him, some looked down upon him, and others sighed. Among those people, Yi Han pitied him deep inside. It's really Mr. Jiang. Mr. Jiang is really here. God, I hope Mr. Jiang can safely pull through. Chapter 343, Dai's Strong Legs. After Zhang Han, Zhao Feng and Dai walked to the center of the platform. Zhang Han walked 2 steps forward. He looked around and smelled lightly, then, he almost had an understanding of everyone's strengths. He thought that there would be some powerful martial artists at the gathering, but it seemed that the quality was lacking. After a glimpse of the crowd, Zhang Han's eyes fixed on Jiang Zongyao, then, he said calmly, hurry up and get started, don't waste my time. I still have to go home to take care of my baby after this. How can I waste my time with such a group of idiots here? Once Zhang Han finished his words, all people present began to discuss. This guy is too arrogant. He really doesn't know who he is. Such a brat, teach him a good lesson. Master Jiang, don't bother yourself with this, I can deal with this punk for you. Even Ge Qinlong was a bit unhappy. I'm the highest ranking person on the scene. Yet you're only a little punk who has just reached the profound stage. Shouldn't you say hello to me before you start fighting? However, he did not intend to say anything, since he had lost interest after looking him up and down. He could just leave such a brat to Jiang Zongyao. Dad, he is Mr. Zhang and the man behind him is Zhao Feng, but I've never seen the gorilla before. I don't know why they brought it here, Yi Han whispered. Oh, Yi Chi shook his head slightly and said, look at his attitude, he's still young and ignorant. This Mr. Zhang is nothing special. Realizing the contempt in his father's words, Yi Han sighed deep inside. Mr. Zhang was still as calm as ever. However, he shouldn't be like this at such a place, where there are so many martial arts masters. Thinking about his ending, Yi Han felt that his business would plummet. Since he provoked Jiang Zongyao, he will definitely be seriously injured. Some rich people and low-ranking martial artists were also watching Zhang Han at the back with curiosity. They didn't understand why that Master Zhang showed up to keep the appointment, but still took such a tough stance. They also didn't understand why he brought such a pet with him. Although this gorilla is quite big, what would be its use in the face of martial artists? Jiang Zongyao became very angry after hearing those words, and when he saw the indifference in Xuanhuan's eyes, he became even angrier. I haven't said anything, yet you started speaking. You even dared to say that I'm wasting your time. Since you are so anxious to die, I'll help you. Jiang Zongyao moved his body and strode to 5 meters away from Zhang Han. Then he said coldly, boy, I guess you still don't know what a duel between martial artists means. Let me tell you first, in a duel, life and death lie in your opponent's hands, and everyone present will act as witnesses. After he said that, many people felt cold both in body and mind. It seemed that even the air had frozen, which made people very nervous. Life and death lie in your opponent's hands. It means that Master Zhang, he wants to kill him. Mu Wu, Huang Qi and other people's facial expressions also changed slightly. Martial artists also had a lot of battles at ordinary times, but their goal was to learn from each other. Only a few battles would involve taking someone's life. Even Xuanhuan narrowed his eyes. He was surprised. He hadn't expected to witness such a scene on that day. Jiang Zongyao was still talking and laughing earlier, but then, he became murderous. It seems that this Mr. Zhang is about to die. Yi Chi shook his head and expressed his emotions at the back. He'll die? Yi Han's facial expression changed slightly. He was distressed. He had just invested in him, but his partner was about to die. What could he do? Judging by everyone's reactions, it seemed that Zhang Han would definitely lose his life. However, after hearing Jiang Zongyao's words, Zhang Han still remained calm. He just waved his hand and said lightly, let's get started, you'll fight with it. Zhang Han pointed to Dai behind him while speaking. Kaboom! Once hearing that, all people began to discuss again. What? Did I mishear? He'll fight with a gorilla? Are you kidding me? Is he out of his mind? Jiang Zongyao was getting angrier and the looks in his eyes showed that he wanted to kill the guy. He stared at Zhang Han and said gruesomely, are you insulting me? Asking him to fight with a gorilla was obviously an insult to him. Wasn't it? Zhang Han stared at Jiang Zongyao, feeling that the guy was speaking too much nonsense, so he nodded and said, yes. Jiang Zongyao's face became red in an instant. He was mad. The next moment, he rushed over and shouted, go to hell. However, while he took 5 steps to approach, Dai also moved. It took a step forward before lifting its leg to kick the man. Seeing that, Jiang Zongyao became fiercer. All right, I'll kill you first before killing your master. Jiang Zongyao clenched his right fist and punched hard. Boom! Under everybody's attention, Jiang Zongyao's fist collided with Dai's foot, causing a muffled sound. Swish, swish, swish. The forward momentum of Jiang Zongyao's body was suddenly stopped and then he stepped back 7 steps. However, Dai didn't move at all. Their difference was seen in an instant. Jiang Zongyao looked up at Dai incredulously. He was totally shocked. What's the situation? Did I lose? What the hell is this? The other people at the back were all shocked. Miwu, Huang Qi and the others even stood up involuntarily. Is this an ordinary gorilla? It fought with the Earth Stage Master, Jiang Zongyao. Yet the Master? How's that possible? Not only the martial artists, but Yi Qi, Hong Kitao, Tang Jie and the others were also shocked with eyes wide open. For the first time, they saw a gorilla that could beat a martial arts master. Is that a spirit beast? Suddenly, Xuanhuan, who was sitting in the main position, stood up and said in surprise. After hearing his words, all the people present felt surprised again. Spirit beast. Generally speaking, only some powerful sects had such beasts. Human beings could cultivate, so could the beasts. From ancient times to the present, there were legends about various beasts. People also had an inkling of the four great beasts in history: azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird and black tortoise. In some ancient books, even more powerful beasts were recorded, which were extremely lethal. Up to the present, when it was already a mature society, spirit beasts were also not rare. At the place where there were heavenly treasures, the beasts, which had lived there for many years, would gradually become spirit beasts with greater aggressiveness. It was said that 6 years ago, Emperor King went out for cultivation and he obtained a treasure in a deep water pool after he slaughtered a python. The python was 7 feet long, with 2 horn-shaped bumps on its head. Some Wu Dao Grand Master had said that given another 2 years, it would turn into a dragon. By then, it would also have the strength of a Wu Dao Grand Master. Yet at the present, after seeing Dai's fighting capacity and hearing Xuanhuan's exclamation, all people looked at Zhang Han in surprise. They had the same question. Where did he get this gorilla? Does he come from some influential forces? Xuanhuan frowned slightly. Where did you get this gorilla? Jiang Zongyao stared at Zhang Han while asking him. By accident, Zhang Han gave a bland response. What? Jiang Zongyao doubted it. I have to say. Just then, Xuanhuan opened his mouth. He gazed at Dai, saying, you were really lucky to have found a gorilla that is close to the profound stage by accident. However, it'll be no match for Master Jiang. In the martial arts world, it wasn't rare for someone to have a spirit beast by accident or find one at a place with treasures, to later tame it. Such people just had good luck. With so little information, Xuanhuan couldn't figure out the specific situation. So he just advised Jiang Zongyao in passing, that the gorilla hadn't reached the profound stage. Then, Jiang Zongyao made note of the message. He looked at Zhang Han and sneered, saying, I don't care where you got such a creature or who you are, but my only target today is you. Oh, then beat it first. Zhang Han pointed to Dai while speaking. Beat it? Do you think it's necessary? Jiang Zongyao said disdainfully. He wasn't on guard and retreated 7 steps earlier, yet if he were prepared, he would have probably only retreated 3 steps. Although his power wasn't as great as Dai's, the gorilla was rather clumsy in his eyes. Oh? Dai's eyes widened. It stared at Jiang Zongyao fiercely before raising its right hand and stretching out its fist. Suddenly, it showed him the middle finger. At the same time, it growled. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh. From its expression, gesture and sound, people inferred that it probably meant, go to hell, you punk, you're rubbish. Is it showing disdain for Master Jiang? All people's eyes widened involuntarily. Yi Han stared at Dai for a while in the back and felt that he had seen such movements and looks somewhere before. Others were also amazed, since they hadn't expected that gorilla to be so smart. Seeing that the gorilla was giving the finger, Jiang Zongyao's face turned pale out of anger. He finally couldn't stand it and shouted. Then I'll kill you first. After that, Jiang Zongyao rushed to Dai. Dai ran 2 steps forward and punched Jiang Zongyao with its right fist. The airflow caused by the fist was very strong. Jiang Zongyao clearly felt that the power contained in that fist was terrifying. If I face this punch directly, I'll be slightly injured. So he moved sideways, while he stretched out his leg and kicked the gorilla on its waist. Boom! A very slight muffled sound came out and Dai's body didn't move at all. Is it that strong? Zhang Zongyao frowned, and then he withdrew his leg and kicked the gorilla 3 times in just 1 second. Bang! 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 The gorilla still didn't move at all. It still didn't move. What a monster is that? Zhang Zongyao was shocked deep inside. Just then, Dai's left fist had come down from his side. He tried to ward it off with his arm and took 6 steps backward when he resisted. The looks in his eyes showed that he began to worry. Although it's clumsy, it's so powerful. It didn't move, but it's invincible. I'll kill you today, you evil creature. Zhang Zongyao shouted and attacked again. Dai slightly opened its mouth and gave a fierce look. The several kicks on its body did cause some pain. When Zhang Zongyao rushed up, he didn't face Dai directly. Instead, he tried to dodge while attacking. Just like that, Zhang Zongyao and Dai were fighting in the center of the field. The people sitting in the back also stood up involuntarily, holding their breaths and looking at the scene. Then they began to whisper. Master Jiang's move, stealing Black Tiger's heart, is really strong. The angle and strength are perfect. Master Jiang's leg sweep is wonderful. It seems that he doubled the force, which should be effective. Oh, with such great force, the gorilla still didn't move. Its physical defense is superb. That man is really lucky to have such a gorilla. Let's wait and see when the gorilla can be moved. Even if its body is strong, there is still a limit. It's impossible for it to resist forever. The martial artists were watching them very seriously, since they could learn some experience from every battle. Those who were not martial artists, with eyes wide open in surprise, had never thought that a gorilla could fight so fiercely with Master Jiang. It's fierce. Yi Han got a little excited and whispered to Yi Qi next to him, now I feel that my investment is worthwhile. Let's not talk about Mr. Jiang's strength for now. The gorilla alone is powerful enough. Even so, it won't escape today. Yi Qi shook his head slightly. Why did you say that? Yi Han asked doubtfully. The battle between martial artists not only involves punches and kicks. Look at Master Jiang. He's fighting leisurely and always has the initiative, though the gorilla didn't move. What's more important is that he hasn't used weapons. Once he does, how will the gorilla be able to defend? Yi Qi replied in a low voice. This. Yi Han was stunned, since he had forgotten about that. Thinking of it, he began to worry again. On the field, 5 minutes had passed while Zhang Zongyao made hundreds of moves to hit Dai, but he still didn't get any results. And Dai, seeing that it couldn't be able to beat Zhang Zongyao, became much angrier and hit the guy harder and harder. But Zhang Zongyao was just like a flexible loach that Dai was unable to grasp. That made Dai very anxious. However, even it itself didn't find that as it was making more moves, it was also gradually accelerating. In addition, it had gotten some rhythm to control those moves. Instead of making a mess of them, after it punched, it would adjust the power and angle before throwing the next punch quickly. Although it was slow, its fighting skill was still improving. After fighting for another 2 minutes, Zhang Zongyao began to pant. Such a high-intensity fight had made his physical strength decrease quickly. Damn it. What a hard battle. Zhang Zongyao cursed in a low voice before he took 7 steps backward when he tried to ward off Dai's punch. He believed that the gorilla must have some weakness and tried several times to find it during the fight. He even attacked it in the crotch and ass, but all in vain, because he'd have nothing to do when the gorilla moved its legs sideways. During that period, Zhang Han, who was standing there with Zhao Feng at the back, looked at the scene and smiled with satisfaction. It's great. This Master Jiang can help Dai improve his weakness. Zhang Zongyao stared at Dai, and suddenly, his eyes fixed on Dai's eyes. Ooh. Just then, Dai took a step and rushed up. Zhang Zongyao stared at the gorilla and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Then he moved his arm and took two concealed weapons like arrows from the hidden pockets in his sleeves. While Dai was coming to him, he yelled loudly, "Go to hell!" He stretched out his hands and in an instant, two flashes of light rushed to Dai's eyes like lightning. At that moment, all people were breathless with fear. Many people faintly felt that the next moment, the two weapons would pierce that gorilla's eyes. Oh no! Zhao Feng was shocked and exclaimed. Even Zhang Han's eyes were slightly narrowed. At the moment when Jiang Zongyao used the hidden weapons, he used the treasure-sniffing nose to find that those were just ordinary weapons, so he didn't make any moves. If those were spirit treasures, Dai wouldn't resist them. However, he knew that even if those were just ordinary weapons, Dai would still suffer some pain to resist them. This is not bad. The physical pain will remind him that he still needs more skills to fight. Under everybody's attention, the two hidden weapons flew to Dai's eyes, which reflected cold light and made people tremble. After seeing that, Dai quickly closed its eyes. Sizzle, sizzle, two soft sounds came out. The two pocket-sized arrows were stabbed on Dai's eyelids, causing them to sink. Eyes were fragile. Just then, Dai felt the unbearable pain. Ow! Dai screamed and rubbed its eyes twice. After it opened them, its eyes were totally red and it even couldn't see Jiang Zongyao clearly. Ow! 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 Dai was completely irritated. It looked at Jiang Zongyao, opened its mouth and snarled a few times. It's the best time to kill him. Jiang Zongyao stretched out his right hand and took out a 0.3 meter long dagger from his back. With a sly smile on his face, he rushed to Dai. When coming near, he suddenly stabbed the dagger into Dai's throat. If an ordinary person was stabbed in the neck like that, he'd probably have lost his life on the spot, even if a great doctor was there. Then, Zhao Feng's face turned pale and he yelled, "Master, save him." Although Dai always pushed him in the past, Zhao Feng's heartbeat accelerated at that moment. After a few days of contact, he had liked Dai very much. Zhang Han made some move that time. He quietly took 5 steps forward and then stopped, looking carefully at the scene. Under people's gazes, the dagger was getting closer and closer to Dai's throat. Many people even felt the coldness on the dagger. A few people who were afraid to see the bloody scene later even closed their eyes. However, when the dagger was about to pierce Dai's skin, its eyes widened and it suddenly thought of the movements people practiced on the beach. Whoosh! Dai quickly moved sideways and lowered its body. It stood on one bent leg and leaned back, showing the shape of a big flying swallow. What mattered was not its action, but its flexibility. A gorilla making such fast movements was really shocking. After seeing that he had failed to stab the gorilla, Jiang Zongyao was a little stunned. He changed his plan and tried to stab it in the lower part of its body. However, when he lowered his head and saw Dai's legs, his pupils shrank. Then Dai stretched out its right leg, planning to kick Jiang Zongyao in his crotch. What? Jiang Zongyao was shocked. Seeing that the gorilla's foot was approaching, he hurriedly threw away the dagger in his hand and covered the critical part with both hands. What the hell? I can't be kicked by him. If he did that, I'd die without descendants. That scene also made everyone present very surprised. Since when did a gorilla learn to hit people in such a critical part? Under everyone's eyes, Jiang Zongyao's hands collided with Dai's foot. His strength was not as strong as Dai's, moreover, his hands were very weak compared with Dai's legs. Jiang Zongyao's hands were kicked heavily and pushed forward. Pa! A loud muffled sound came out. He hit himself in the crotch with his own hands. Ah! Jiang Zongyao planned to use that force to jump backwards and then he did do that, but the great pain in there made his whole body tremble. It hurts. It really hurts. I can't stand it. While Jiang Zongyao screamed, he suddenly fell on the ground 7 meters away, and then he covered his crotch and couldn't stop screaming. At that moment, all men present felt an overwhelming cold. They even felt that their lower bodies had been numbed, as if they had experienced it themselves. Ah! Jiang Zongyao stood up with a pale face and looked resentfully at Dai, who had just stood up, almost like roaring. "Kill him for me." As soon as he said that, the four profound stage masters, including Mu Wu and Huang Qi, took a look at each other and then rushed to Dai. Jiang Zongyao endured great pain and also rushed over with a ferocious face. He planned to kill that abominable gorilla in the next round of attacks. Chapter 344, Who's Stronger? While they were rushing over, Mu Wu put a hand into his pocket and took out a diamond-shaped awl that reflected a cold light. Generally, if such a weapon was plunged into and then pulled out of one's body, that person wouldn't stop bleeding. Huang Qi quietly took out a dagger from his waist with his right hand, which was painted black and stained with poison on the front edge. If it was stabbed in the enemy's body, he would be poisoned, to die within a minute. Except Jiang Zongyao, all others took out their own weapons. They all knew that it would be very difficult to kill that gorilla without weapons. Jiang Zongyao was so mad. Without weapons, he planned to pierce the gorilla's eyes with his fingers. The pain in the lower body was constantly reminding him to be fierce, much fiercer than ever before. At that moment, a few people who were still sitting there just then, including Gequan Long, had also stood up. They hadn't expected that it would develop into such a fierce fight. There was no doubt that they thought the gorilla would die in the next moment. It seemed that many people's hearts were about to jump out of their mouths. A total of 5 masters, 4 at the peak of the profound stage and 1 newbie at the earth stage, were fighting against the gorilla at the same time. That scene was so shocking. Although some people might say that they were bullying the gorilla, they knew that only strength prevailed in the martial arts world. The eyes of Ninai, Tang Jie, Hong Li and many others in the back hall gradually widened, and some found it too cruel. In fact, that gorilla was quite cute in their view. Gradually, under everyone's attention, those 5 people were getting closer and closer to Dai. Dai's eyes were still red, which contained some hostility. Ow! While roaring in anger, it unclenched both fists and prepared to fight against those people. Master asked me to fight them. Then I have to win. Facing that round of attacks, he faintly felt a crisis of life and death. However, he didn't back down. Master saved my life. So Master's word means everything. They were near. They were nearer. Those 5 people were only half a meter away from Dai. It had even felt the coldness of those weapons in their hands. Ow! Dai roared once again. It clenched its fists and wanted to rush over. Go to hell! Jiang Zongyao shouted in anger. The fierce attacks from those people would reach it soon. Under everybody's attention, suddenly, a figure appeared in front of the gorilla. It was Zhang Han. It was Master Zhang. It was his master. It was his owner. Everybody's eyes were fixed on him. Zhang Han raised his leg. For the next moment, no one could see clearly what was happening. Bang, 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 clatter, 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 clatter. 5 muffled sounds came out, followed by 5 crisp sounds of fractures. The 5 people who rushed over to Dai looked ferocious with a sense of bloodthirstiness in their eyes. However, they were behaving as if being hit by the waves. Their bodies were bent and moving backwards. Poof! While moving backwards, all the 5 people spit a lot of blood without exception. Dong! Those people fell on the ground 15 meters away. They either covered their chests or their ribs, knowing that more than 5 bones had been broken, that they were suffering serious internal injuries, and that the person had beat them down in an extremely scary way. When did he appear in front of the gorilla? When did he make his move? How did he make his move? Those injured didn't see it clearly. They raised their heads helplessly and glanced at the man standing in front of the gorilla. He was still as composed as usual. He just stood there quietly, watching those people falling on the ground. His gaze remained calm, as if the person who had just hit them was not him. How's that possible? Jiang Zongyao and the others opened their mouths and were about to say something, but suddenly, some hot air rushed into their throats, followed by some bloody smell. Poof! Those people spit out some blood again and became completely weak. The whole place was deadly silent at that moment, and people could only feel the gentle wind that was blowing, but they still had a question in mind. Why is he so strong? Everyone was thinking about the same question. Originally they thought that the gorilla wouldn't withstand those people's attacks and would die on the spot. However, they hadn't expected that Master Zhang, who had been standing in the back, would suddenly make his move and severely injure those people with great speed. Even if there was no defense, it still needed great strength. Great. It's amazing. Yi Han's eyes brightened and his heartbeat accelerated. It was like buying a lottery ticket and not winning the prize, because two numbers were wrong. Thus, you felt disappointed, but later, there came the news that the staff had made an error and you had actually won the first prize. It made Yi Han feel excited and brought a flush to his face. He felt like having won the top prize. Everybody knew that the 5 people who had fallen to the ground were all great masters, yet Mr. Zhang beat all of them down in an instant. He's so strong, ha ha ha, awesome. While Yi Han was so excited, Yi Qi was a bit stunned by his side. He looked at Zhang Han incredibly and couldn't figure out what had happened. Did he counterattack at the last moment? Did he beat them down? Even if he did, it shouldn't be that simple. He found it incredible. On the other side, Hong Kitao's family members had also stood up. They were totally shocked with eyes wide open. Especially Hong Li and Ninai, both of whom had seen battles between martial artists, such as sanda competitions, taekwondo competitions and boxing competitions. The fights would be more intense if there were no rules. However, they had never seen such a fight, where a man could make such fast and mysterious movements. It was the first time that they almost couldn't follow their fighting. Mr. Zhang beat down those 5 people in an instant, making them vomit blood both in the air and on the ground. That scene was fascinating. Ordinary people were very shocked, while the martial artists present were even more shocked. They knew very well how strong a man would be if he could seriously injure 5 great masters at the same time. Maybe some people suspected him of sneak attacking. That was a battle after all, and they didn't even see his movements clearly, which caused great fear in their hearts. Xuanhuan was also standing there, staring at Zhang Han with a frown. This man's skill doesn't match his cultivation stage. His actions just now were so neat. If it were me, I wouldn't be much better than him. But he just reached the profound stage. Is it that he has some secret to gaining instant combat power? The spirit beast? The secret method? It seems that this guy found some special opportunity. Opportunity. Thinking of this, Xuanhuan's eyes lit up. No matter what kind of opportunity he has, I'll just take it away from him. Just as he was thinking, a sudden exclamation made him come to himself. After seeing what was happening, his facial expression changed slightly. Seeing that those people had fallen down, Dai, who was behind Zhang Han, opened its mouth and showed its teeth. Ow! Dai roared before it moved and rushed to Jiang Zongyao, who was lying on the ground. Through its actions, people knew that it was planning to kill those injured men. After running a few steps, Dai raised its right fist and prepared to slam it down on Jiang Zongyao. No! With eyes wide open, Jiang Zongyao screamed and felt powerless, but in the face of a life threat, he still tried to move backwards. However, his speed was not as fast as Dai's, and Dai was almost about to catch up. Stop! While shouting, Xuanhuan moved his body and ran to Dai. After 5 steps, he jumped forward with his right leg in front and the left leg bent. He planned to kick the gorilla with his left leg before kicking him again with the right leg. Zhang Han also moved his body after seeing that. He knew that Dai was no match for that person for the moment. After 2 steps forward, Zhang Han tipped lightly and his body rose by 2 meters. Then he turned around handsomely in the air, before stretching out his right leg. At that moment, all eyes around them gradually widened and they couldn't help but hold their breaths. The most powerful man present, Xuanhuan, a heaven stage master, had made his move. Master Zhang, who had just reached the profound stage, bravely faced the enemy. That time, Xuanhuan might defeat his enemy overwhelmingly. Under everybody's attention, the gorilla stopped. While Master Gu and Master Zhang were getting closer and closer, seeing what was happening, a cold look appeared in Xuanhuan's eyes. "Kid, you'll die," he sneered in his heart, while the chi inside his body was constantly gathered to the right leg, and he planned to kill Zhang Han with only one move. The two figures approached quickly and eventually collided. Their 2 feet met. Boom! A clear muffled sound came out. It seemed that they had kicked everybody in their hearts, making all of them tremble. They knew that the force of that confrontation was horrific. Many people began to feel that Master Gu was immensely powerful. The next moment made their eyes fill with shock. Whoosh! After the 2 feet collided, Master Gu's eyes gradually widened, as if he had kicked on an iron plate. His body quickly moved backwards. "What's this? How's that possible?" Xuanhuan was a bit stunned. "Did I lose this battle?" Feeling that he was kicked away by a strong power gave him a shock. His body quickly moved backwards. Master Gu was a heavenly stage master after all. While constantly counteracting the power, he looked back and planned for a chic landing. Seeing that he'd fall in the main seat soon, Master Gu adjusted his body's direction and sat right in the chair. His feet slammed down on the ground and his body was fixed there, but the chair under his ass. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The backrest, the armrests, and 3 legs were all broken and fell on the ground. Even the seat was torn apart and the last leg had cracks in it, but Xuanhuan still kept that position by controlling his body. He remained composed and stayed in a normal position, sitting on the shabby so-called chair. When he saw that Zhang Han landed handsomely after turning around, the corners of his mouth trembled. He endured the numbness of his right foot and forced himself to maintain that position, saying as a senior, "You have great strength, very good. Master Zhang of New Moon Bay, I made my move in order to remind you that you should be lenient whenever you can. Master Zhang is the great deacon of the National Security Agency, so killing him would also put you in trouble. As for the other people, they weren't some nobodies, either. Since you have won now, then just let them go." While talking, he was actually cursing in his heart. He appeared to be calm, but he was actually irritated deep inside. Damn it, a man who has reached the profound stage shouldn't be this powerful. He definitely has a secret to increasing power instantly. Chapter 345. The Makings of a King. While Xuanhuan was speaking, all people kept their eyes fixed on him. He still looked so decent and dominating, like a strong man lecturing his subordinates. But what about the shabby chair with only 1 leg under your ass? It seemed strange to the people present. Thinking of their collision just then, they all felt that Master Gu was forcing himself at the moment. Following Xuanhuan's words, everyone looked at Zhang Han once again. That time, there was no contempt in their eyes. They were filled with shock. He is so strong that he can even beat Master Gu. Yi Han was the most excited at the moment. If it weren't on such an occasion, he would have shouted loudly. Yi Qi's heart also beat faster, because he faintly felt that his son had invested in a rather strong force. He had thought that he was just a little frog in the pond, but who would have expected for him to be a dragon in the sea? That was such a big contrast. Under everybody's attention, Zhang Han didn't have any expression. He was just as composed as before. He took a look at Xuanhuan, and then looked at Dai, who had already calmed down with bloody red eyes. Because it felt that its master had already avenged it, Zhang Han extended his right hand and patted Dai on its belly. Then he chuckled and said something that shocked everyone. "Kill them if you want." Oh? Dai's eyes gradually widened. It showed its teeth while looking at Jiang Zongyao and the others lying on the ground. Those people who were being stared at suddenly felt so cold, just like having fallen into a frozen abyss. Especially Jiang Zongyao. He felt extremely cold, with strong remorse deep inside. What a monster have I offended? The others were even more remorseful. In order to please Jiang Zongyao, they were even about to lose their lives. Why is it like this? After hearing the words, Dai walked toward Jiang Zongyao. It didn't walk so fast because it knew that the people in the front couldn't move at all. Seeing day as it neared, the faces of Zhang Zongyao and the others turned pale and they hurriedly yelled for help. "Master Gu, help us!" Gequanlong couldn't just look on, so he stood up. The shabby chair with only one leg finally fell to the ground, but he didn't care. He looked straight at Zhang Han and said, "Are you sure? Zhang Zongyao is the great deacon of the National Security Agency, and all the others have their own forces. If you kill them today, you'd have infinite trouble in the future. Young man, don't be driven by anger. Moreover, I, Gequanlong, am still here." After hearing the words, Zhang Han smiled. He stopped being so composed for the first time. The looks in his eyes became indifferent, showing the indifference to life, and he appeared to be extraordinarily refined. It seemed that he was still just a calm martial artist the last moment, but in the next he had become the king of the land. He looked at Gequanlong and said indifferently, "Who do you think you are? What's so special about the National Security Agency? They are just as lowly as ants, so what if I killed them?" His words slapped everyone in their hearts like huge waves. Many people gasped in astonishment. They were completely shocked at the moment. They hadn't expected that the man would have the makings of a king who was ruling the whole land. Just then, Yi Han was so excited that he trembled and felt goosebumps all over his body. He was shouting in his heart, "Mr. Zhang is awesome. This is Mr. Zhang, this is Mr. Zhang, I won my bet." Yi Chi, who was next to him, all the martial artists and the rich people were struck dumb with astonishment. He ignored Gequanlong and the National Security Agency. He also said those masters were just like ants. What kind of person can and dare to say such things? In any case, they had completely imprinted Zhang Han in their minds. His expression, his words, and the title of Master Zhang of New Moon Bay. They couldn't fully believe it for the time being, but when they thought of what had happened on that day a few years later, they would say, Mr. Zhang's words weren't so harsh at that time. Not only those people, but Zhao Feng was also trembling behind them. Is a cultivated just like this? Are those the true features of a master? It turns out that he's so overbearing when he's angry and he has such a strong temperament. He always stands aloof from worldly success because he's not willing to fight, but once he begins to fight, he'll become the king of the world. Zhao Feng thanked fate once again, because if he hadn't met the master, he'd probably have lost his life. At the same time, he sighed with emotion deep inside. In front of Xian and Meng Meng, his master was easygoing and living cozily, just like an ordinary excellent man, but under the ordinary appearance was hidden a strong and unbeatable heart. After that, Zhao Feng looked at Zhang Zongyao and the others on the ground and shook his head slightly. He sighed. Master almost paid no attention to their affairs, yet they still irritated him. They really deserved to die. He finally understood his master. If someone slightly ridiculed him or provoked him, perhaps he'd ignore it, but if they hurt Meng Meng and Xian, they would be so pathetic because they'd definitely end up a miserable failure. Just then, on the field, after Gequanlong heard Zhang Han's words, he was stunned at the first moment. And then, he looked at Zhang Han carefully and his heart skipped a beat. It seemed that he had seen such an imposing manner from Emperor King many years ago, but because he was far away, he didn't feel anything. However, he felt the man in front of him was indeed indifferent to the lives of those people on the ground from the bottom of his heart. It seemed that they were just ants who should be stepped on and die. At the next moment, Gequanlong's face suddenly turned red and then darkened. He was angry. Because Zhang Han had just said, "Who do you think you are? Who am I?" Gequanlong's body became stiff. He stepped forward by 3 centimeters and wanted to fight him, but then, he stopped because he wasn't sure he'd win. After thinking about it, Gequanlong snorted and said, "Good, you are something else. If you dare to do it, you'll definitely have trouble in the future." That's all I needed to say. Do as you wish. While Gequanlong was speaking, Zhang Han didn't even look at him. Instead, he turned and walked back, while saying calmly, "Hurry up, we should go back." People knew that he said those words to the gorilla. After saying that, Zhang Han went straight to the intersection ahead and Zhao Feng followed him quickly from the side. Dai opened its mouth and stepped forward to Jiang Zongyao, then, it grabbed his ankle and lifted him up. All people present were frightened, fearing that Master Jiang would die on the spot if the gorilla punched him a few times. However, Dai glanced at Xuanhuan and rolled its eyes before that, then, it didn't beat him so hard. It grabbed Jiang Zongyao's leg and threw him upwards, hovering 3 meters high, before giving a side kick with its right foot. Bang, bang. Just like a ball that was being kicked, Jiang Zongyao was kicked away and crashed into the cliff at the back before falling on the ground. Then he spit out a few mouthfuls of blood and fainted. Dai also did the same thing to Miwu, Huang Qi and the others. They were kicked away just like balls and then fell on the ground next to Jiang Zongyao. It was finished. Dai clapped its hands and glanced at the crowd. Ooh, 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 ooh. After the cry, Dai jerked out its right fist. That scared a lot of people. Then, it showed them the middle finger in contempt before turning and running to follow Zhang Han. At the moment, all people were looking at the backs of Dai, Zhang Han and Zhao Feng, who felt insignificant. There was a dead silence on the field. They hadn't expected that things would develop like that. Ah! Are they dead? Suddenly, a trembling voice was heard. It was a profound stage master who had almost joined the fight earlier but then stopped in time. He was the most nervous at the moment, since he had already decided to help those masters at that time. If he really did, he would. The consequences would be disastrous. After he asked, Xuanhuan moved his body and went to the cliff quickly. He squatted down to check them and then felt relieved. They're seriously injured, but they won't die. Xuanhuan responded, while reaching out his hand to press the acupoints on those people's bodies. Puff, puff. Those people spit out blood again. With pale faces, they finally opened their eyes. Master, Gu. Jiang Zongyao said extremely weakly. No need to say anything. Xuanhuan stood up and glanced at the crowd, saying slowly as a senior. Master Jiang, you took the initiative and invited him here to fight, so I didn't intervene. However, we're all good friends and I'll surely make him pay for your injuries today. I'll personally avenge you after a few days. Guards, take them back to rest. It was rather interesting that he said such things to those who were injured and pretended that he did care about them. At least, many people were convinced that. It turned out that Master Gu didn't fight because of this. If he did, that man would have surely been defeated. However, a lot of rich people and a few martial artists looked at him strangely. If you'll personally avenge them, why didn't you fix the date with that man just now? Also, how will you explain why you were kicked away by him earlier? How will you explain the shabby chair you were sitting in just now? The green hands in the martial arts world couldn't understand Master Gu's thoughts. After Xuanhuan finished speaking, some people rushed over from the back to take Miwu, Jiang Zongyao and the others away. Xuanhuan meditated in silence. I'll go back and improve myself soon. After that, that brat will know what a real heaven stage master will be like. I'll show him the great difference between the heaven stage and the profound stage. Let's call it a day. Dismissed. Xuanhuan waved his hand. Before everyone left, he jumped up onto the cliff and rose by a dozen meters in only a few steps. Then he landed on a tree, appearing to be a great master. What was a master? What was a senior? The person who didn't take the usual path. He looked back calmly, and suddenly saw Hong Kitao and the others on the back of the crowd. He was just thinking about how to make himself less embarrassed, but he had forgotten them. Then Xuanhuan looked at them coldly while saying, Hong Kitao, send Hong Lian's Ninai to my house in 5 days to make amends to my nephew for 3 days, otherwise, he planned to say, you'd end up just like Jiang Zongyao and those guys. But soon, he found it not appropriate, since those people were seriously injured by others, not him. Then, Xuanhuan thought for 2 seconds, but still didn't know what to say. So he just snorted and then left. Chapter 346, Leaving After the Battle. As Hong Kitao and his companions heard what Xuanhuan said, their faces changed over and over again. In the end, Hong Kitao looked extremely ghastly. Send Hong Li and Ninai over and ask them to apologize to his nephew. For 3 days? He certainly knew what Xuanhuan meant. It was nothing more than torturing both Hong Li and Ninai for 3 days after he sent them over. Of course, Xuanhuan would afflict them in different ways. That was, he would torture the former physically, but torture the latter both physically and mentally. He does go too far. Tang Jie's face turned somewhat pale, and her palms could not stop shaking. Auntie Tang, don't be angry. Ninai said in an aggrieved tone, in the worst case, we may as well run away. Run away? Tang Jie sighed, feeling a little annoyed. Yes, they could escape. However, Hong Kitao's property remained here, and 2 of Hong Li's brothers were also here. Once they left, Xuanhuan was likely to take action to force them back. Fu Ke, at the worst, I can ask someone to kill Gebengfeng. Hong Li's face turned red, and he said this as he gritted his teeth. Don't be anxious. Looking at the 3 people's expressions, he took on a calm face and said in a low voice, the world is not under Xuanhuan's sole authority, and I'm still here. What are you afraid of? Just go back now, and I'll find a way to handle it. Then, he took the lead in walking to the intersection ahead. His words did make them feel better, but Hong Kitao became angrier and more worried. Find a way? Will I have a good idea? He thought that he was likely to pay much for asking a master for help this time. Hong Kitao sighed secretly, hoping to turn the corner smoothly. He did not mind spending some money, but was worried about finding someone who could not defeat Xuanhuan. In addition to his family, others were still intoxicated in the battle. If they went down at this moment, they could hear that plenty of people sighed from time to time. The chimpanzee, which was locked in a duel with Master Jiang, is really fierce. Is its strength as strong as a master's? It is almost as powerful as King Kong in the movie, and it looks really cool. Damn it, if I have one, I'll definitely wake up, laughing from my dream. Stop dreaming. I heard news from another master that it will take Master Jiang and his companions a few months to recover, and their cultivation possibly will decrease by then. They were badly injured and were lucky to be alive. I think that Master Jiang of New Moon Bay is truly formidable as he actually damned Master Ge face to face. My God, he's so cruel. It is he who treats others' lives like dirt. How awesome he is. This is the martial arts world. I won't regret coming here today, because I do broaden my horizon. For them, what had happened today on Mount Yunding was like a dream. Even every martial artist felt a little confused, because Master Jiang, who was at the profound stage, subverted their world outlooks. Although he was just a profound stage master, he actually could defeat 1 earth stage and 4 profound stage masters within 1 stroke. What does this mean? He fought against the one who was much more powerful than him. What a horrible man. Why hadn't they seen him before, since he could compete against the opponent who was much more formidable than him? On the way down the mountain, many people took their mobile phones to call their friends or relatives. What they said the first time was roughly the same. Hello, something big happened on Mount Yunding. Have you heard of Master Jiang of New Moon Bay before? It's really incredible, and I need to tell you. It was obvious that the news about the Battle of Mount Yunding today was bound to spread in the martial arts world of Hong Kong at a really high speed. At the parking lot on the hillside, Yi Han, Yi Chi, and their guardians all got into the car and left slowly. Dad, what do you think? Do I have good taste? I have told you that Mr. Jiang is particularly powerful. Yi Han said with great excitement. Xuanhuan, you do the right thing this time. Yi Chi laughed heartily and became really delighted, and then he patted Yi Han on the shoulder and said, his strength is so shocking and strong. As long as he gains the upper hand of Master Ge in a few days, he will absolutely gain a firm foothold in Hong Kong. Ah, will they fight against each other again? Yi Han was stunned and said, but Master Jiang was defeated by Mr. Jiang today. He may not have truly lost to the master. Perhaps Master Ge held back on purpose since he failed to figure out Mr. Zhang's origin. Yi Qi said in a deep voice. If Ge Qinlong saw what was happening at this moment, he must have been moved to tears. What I need is the genius who can understand me like you. Will Mr. Zhang be in danger if he can't prevail? Yi Han asked in a hurry. I don't know what will happen. No matter what Master Ge will do, Mr. Zhang is really powerful. Defeating 5 masters within one stroke is far beyond the strength of ordinary people. Oh, of course, Mr. Zhang is indeed a formidable man. At this point, on the way back to New Moon Bay, in the Land Rover, Zhao Feng, who was driving, looked at Dai from the rear-view mirror. Seeing its eyes were still red, Zhao Feng asked, Dai, are your eyes still painful? Whoa. Dai twisted its mouth and responded to him. It rubbed its eyelids with hands, showing that they still hurt. It was not satisfied with the result of today's fight, for it had not beat the enemy up. It seemed to be a bit shameful that it actually had not touched the enemy even if they had competed for so long. Looking at its expression, Zhang Han shook his head with a smile and said, There remains a bucket of yanking water under the thunder yang tree. You can drink some after going back and put several drops in your eyes. You did a good job today and was really awesome today. Therefore, you can eat whatever animals on the mountain you want later. Whoa! Dai's eyes widened, and it curled its lips, crying in jubilation a few times. Whoa! Then it laughed. Ha! As Dai laughed, it started to dance for joy. I'm so happy to be praised by my master. Besides, the master said that I could eat whatever I wanted. Ha! I really want to eat the pigs with long hair for a long time. I can finally eat them today. Since Dai was too heavy, the car shook slightly as it moved. Seeing Dai's appearance, Zhao Feng burst into laughter. Whoa! After shaking for a few minutes, Dai yelled and waved at Zhang Han and Zhao Feng. Looking at its expression, the two of them knew that it was trying to tell them, if it wasn't because the guy was too crafty, I have already hammered him to death. Fine, you are powerful, okay? Zhao Feng said with a smile. Then he looked at Zhang Han, who was sitting in the passenger seat, and said, Master, you moved so fast just now. Are all the cultivators so formidable? It's so exaggerated. They said that you, as a profound stage master, could defeat them with negligible effort. Generally speaking, masters at the early stage of qi refining is likely to beat Master Jiang, but they are possibly defeated in the face of 5 masters like him. Zhang Han shook his head slightly and said, How could you defeat them so easily, Master? Zhao Feng asked with curiosity. I'm not a common master at the early stage of qi refining. Zhang Han found it ridiculous. He used to be a cultivator at the past tribulation stage and had a good command of knowledge about cultivation that was not comparable to that of the average people. Although he was just at the early stage of qi refining with inadequate spiritual force, he could use it extremely efficiently. Therefore, his movements were quick, accurate and ruthless. Those so-called masters were definitely not a patch on him. At this moment, Zhao Feng patted himself on the forehead and said with a smile, That's right, Master is the most powerful. Whoa, I'm also stronger than you. Zhao Feng's mouth trembled slightly. As they chatted with each other, they arrived at Mount New Moon. Dai got out of the car and went up the mountain after waving its hand. Zhao Feng drove Zhang Han back to the restaurant. After Zhang Han got out of the car, he got into the car, heading for the beach in front of Mount New Moon. He prepared to check how Instructor Liu and others' training was going. After a few days of training, Instructor Liu successfully reached the inward strength stage. Since he was so excited for breaking through, he fought with Zhao Feng without any hesitation. Eventually, he was apparently defeated. Instructor Liu could not stop complaining secretly that Zhao Feng did not show respect for him in the face of so many people from the Wolfhead team. However, after a few days of training, more than half of the people of the Wolfhead team had been promoted to the obvious strength stage. The rest of them were also about to break through. Moreover, after they were promoted, Instructor Liu decided to go to the security company to work with Ah Hu and his companions for a period of time, and play against them. In the meantime, Instructor Liu promised that he would offer various teachers of different professions and establish a shooting range behind the company. Everything was developing in an orderly manner. Ah Hu and his teammates learned a variety of knowledge in the company, making great progress. Elsewhere, in Meng's recreational restaurant, Zhang Han had left at 12:30, and came back at nearly 2 o'clock. During 1.5 hours, he spent 1 hour and 20 minutes on the road, and only spent 10 minutes on going up Mount Yunding, fighting with those masters and going down the mountain. Papa, why do you come back so late? Meng misses you. Meng, who was playing with toys on the sofa on the first floor, quickly stretched out her small arms to Zhang Han and asked for a hug after catching sight of him. After Zhang Han picked up the little girl, Meng pouted and said with a look of dissatisfaction, Papa, Auntie Lili bullied Meng. Meng's tone made Zhang Li and Liu King, who were watching TV on the sofa, burst out laughing. What? How did she bully Meng? Tell me, and I'll beat her later. Zhang Han touched the end of Meng's tiny nose with his hand and said with a smile, Well, I haven't finished watching Xuanhuan yet. But Auntie Lili changed the channel, and then Xuanhuan disappeared. She did not let me watch it. Meng said while pouting, Ouch, my little princess. Zhang Li found it ridiculous and said, The ending song of the cartoon was heard. It certainly disappeared since the cartoon was finished showing. I see, we should punish her. What if we don't allow her to have dinner tonight? Zhang Han asked with a chuckle. Well. Meng blinked her big eyes and was about to answer him. Zhang Li said, Ahem, what did I bought just now? I remember that the little guy really enjoyed it. Huh? Meng was stunned all of a sudden. She stopped blinking her big clear eyes, then hastily said, No. Meng did not eat ice cream. Papa, Auntie Lili can have dinner at night. While speaking, Meng looked at Zhang Han. Zhang Han tried his best not to burst out laughing. He pretended not to realize the true meaning behind the words and promised with a nod. Fine, Meng, just kiss me. Mew. Meng kissed Zhang Han's face several times obediently. Papa, did you find Big Hi? What's Day? Why didn't it come with you? Shall we go to play with Big Hi? The cartoon came to an end. Meng wants to go to the Xanadu to play with Day and Little Hai. Your mother will come back soon, why don't we come with her? Zhang Han glanced at his watch and answered. When she had left in the morning, Xian had said that she would come back at about 3 o'clock today, but she had to go out to take some scenes at late night. Chapter 347, What did you hear? Well, okay, I'll wait for Mama. Meng nodded compliantly. Good girl. Zhang Han kissed Meng on her tender face, holding her back to the sofa. Brother, what did you do just now? Where's Zhao Feng? Didn't he go with you? Zhang Li glanced at the entrance and did not find Zhao Feng, so she asked curiously. He went off on some errand. Zhang Han replied. Why didn't he inform me that he went out? I'm waiting for him to come back and play games with me. Zhang Li curled her lips. Do you like him, Xie? Zhang Han stared at his sister for a while and suddenly asked. After hearing what he said, Zhang Li froze with her eyes unblinking. A few seconds later, she shook her head and said, No, I just think he is really interesting. Oh. Zhang Han smiled without saying anything. He realized that his sister probably had a crush on Zhao Feng. However, for the emotional issues, he would not intervene as long as Zhang Li did not fall in love with a jerk. Hey, here comes somebody. Liu King suddenly said as she looked at the door. They looked over and saw Pearson coming in with a man with golden hair and blue eyes, carrying a small box. Boss, I am back, I bring the truffles you need. Pearson raised the small box in his hand and said with a smile. Yeah, Zhang Han nodded. When Pearson and his friend, who was 1.8 meters high, walked close to them, Pearson said, "Boss, let me introduce the man. This is Stephen, the regional manager of Michelin in Hong Kong." "Hello, Mr. Zhang, I'm Stephen. I heard that the food here was very delicious before, so I especially come here to visit you." Stephen reached out his hand with a smile. Zhang Han shook hands with him, then responded with a nod. "Hello." Then he looked at the box in Pearson's hand. Pearson took a few steps forward and opened the box, in which there were 3 black truffles and 4 white truffles, which cost Zhang Han hundreds of thousand yuan. These black truffles are from France, while the white ones come from Italy. Although they are all of top quality, it took 7 days to transport, so I recommend that you'd better eat them up today, boss. Pearson said. "They look like ordinary truffles." Liu King blinked her eyes for a moment, finding nothing special. "Lady, you're wrong. Black and white truffle is one of the 4 famous bacteria in the world. Since they are extremely rare, even fresh and normal truffles cost over $1,000 per kilogram in the market. These truffles, of good quality, are very rare," Pearson introduced. Black truffles enjoyed the laudatory title of black diamond in cookery, while white truffles are white diamonds. In France, the natural truffles are equivalent to gold, and the French often say that 1 gram of black fungus is equivalent to 1 gram of gold. As one of the favorite fungus for the people in Europe and the United States, it is favored among the leaders of various European and American countries by right of its delicious taste. It's so expensive. Liu King stuck her tongue out and asked, "How do we eat them?" "White truffles should be eaten raw, while black truffles can be processed into truffle sauce, matching with steaks. You can make a steamed egg with black truffles, fried egg with black truffles, or truffle cream soup, which has a unique flavor." Stephen said. "Sit for a while, Meng Meng. Papa is going to prepare the ingredients for dinner." Zhang Han put Meng Meng, who was gazing around with curiosity, on the sofa, then walked to the kitchen, carrying the small box. After taking out the black truffles, he washed them with clear water and gently brushed the dirt on the black truffles with small brush. Then he started cutting. He cut them into thin slices first, and then chopped them into small pieces. The next moment, he put a dozen of eggs and the pieces into a bowl, stirred them, and then put it in the refrigerator. Seeing what Zhang Han was doing, Stephen nodded slightly. According to his techniques and the steps, Stephen was aware that he was also an expert. The purpose of putting the bowl in the refrigerator was to let the flavor of truffles permeate into the egg liquid after a few hours. Only in this way could he cook a dish with excellent taste. Finding that Zhang Han almost finished preparing, Pearson and Stephen left. Shortly after they left, the Bugatti Veyron drove back to the parking lot. Zif and Xian got out of the car and walked to the restaurant. "Ouch, I have finally finished my work. I'm so tired." "Brother-in-law, is there a feast at night?" Zif shook her head and said, "Yes." Zhang Han smiled and washed his hands, after wiping them off with a towel. He walked out of the kitchen and came to Xian. He sized her up and whispered, "Are you a little tired? Why don't you rest for a few days?" "It's okay, I should strike while the iron is hot now. I won't have a good rest until I finish my work." Xian grinned at Zhang Han, and then went to the sofa to sit down and put Meng Meng into her arms. She kissed Meng Meng's cheek and said with a smile, "Do you miss me, Meng Meng?" "Yes." Meng Meng put down the toy in her hand and threw herself into Xian's arms, kissing her on the face. "Mama, both Papa and I are waiting for you to go to the Xanadu after you come back." Meng Meng pouted and said. After hearing her words, Xian paused. She had planned to lie down and rest for a while since she was somewhat tired. However, after thinking for a moment, she said with a nod, "Okay, let me change my clothes." Then Xian stood up and walked up the stairs. On the way to her bedroom, Xian moved her right shoulder a few times and subconsciously pressed the back of the shoulder with her left hand. "What's wrong? Have you had any pain?" Zhang Han walked over and asked with care. I have no idea, it seems to be twisted, and I feel a little pain in the right shoulder. Xian replied. I'll give you a need, let's go. Zhang Han said, then went upstairs, holding Xian's tender hand. After they entered the bedroom, Zhang Han closed the door, and said, grinning, lie prone on the bed first. Well. Xian took off her coat and lay on the bed with her stomach down, wearing a white t-shirt and a pair of thin light blue jeans. Zhang Han also went on the bed and sat on Xian's back. As soon as he felt the softness of Xian's beautiful arms, Zhang Han became hot. He could not help but have a physical reaction. Xian soon sensed Zhang Han's change, and her face turned red all of a sudden. She said in mock anger, ouch, move up a little. If they were a long-married couple, she would directly say that his cock was against her. At this moment, Xian was still a little shy and was too embarrassed to get close to Zhang Han, finding it was a little strange. However, Zhang Han clearly knew what she was thinking. Then Zhang Han moved up a little, with his legs supporting most of the weight of his body on the bed. Xian, therefore, did not feel very heavy. His hand was pressed on the back of Xian's shoulder, gently pressing several surrounding acupoints. Is it painful when I press here? Zhang Han asked. A little. How about here? It hurts more, but I can bear. How about here? A little bit. Here? Oh. When he pressed an acupoint, Xian suddenly screamed and said, it hurts badly. It's here. Don't press so hard. Please. Okay, relax. Just relax first. Zhang Han felt the part of Xian's muscles tightened, so he gently stroked her. After Xian relaxed, he converged his spiritual force on his hand, with his strength gradually increasing. When Zhang Han massaged her shoulder, Xian felt pain but comfortable. After Zhang Han pressed a few times, Xian could not help but let out a cry. Zhang Han suddenly froze after hearing Xian's cry. This hum sounded so pleasing. It seemed that she also had hummed in this way when he had sex with her several years ago. Xian also reacted, and her face became ruddier. How could I cry in this way? How shameful I am. Xian pulled her bottom lip between her teeth and hid her head into the pillow, feeling too embarrassed to call out. Then Zhang Han's eyes were imbued with fun, and he pressed even harder. So, Xian could not help but raise her head and called out. On the first floor, while chatting, Liu Oqi peeked at the pot on the stove in the kitchen inadvertently from the corner of her eye, only to find it was boiling and the heat waves were rising. She, therefore, hurriedly said, oh, the food is boiling, should we remind him? Yeah? Zhang Li glanced at the kitchen and said, please go upstairs and inform my brother. Okay. Liu King got up and ran upstairs. When she came to the door of the bedroom and was about to knock on the door, she faintly heard a voice from inside. Press mildly, I feel pain. Ouch, you are so bad, you press too hard. Fine, I will press a little milder. Gurgle. Liu King swallowed her saliva. Her face immediately turned red. The hand that just was about to knock on the door seemed to get a shock, withdrawing like a lightning. Listening to the sound inside, she could not help blushing, with her heart pounding constantly. The next moment, she quickly turned and ran quietly to the stairs. Phew. After going downstairs, Liu King heaved a great sigh of relief. Why doesn't my brother come down? Zhang Li asked casually. No. Liu King said slyly. What's wrong with you? How is your face so red? Zhang Li asked curiously. No, is it red? No. Liu King repeatedly shook her head. How strange you are, what did my brother say? Turn off the fire? Zhang Li said inexplicably. I have no idea. Liu King said with a red face. Didn't you ask my brother? Hey? Zifeng thought for a moment, then suddenly stared at Liu King and asked. Did you see anything? No. Liu King quickly waved her hands and said in a hurry, I saw nothing, but I heard something. Hear something? Did you hear any noises? Zhang Li said as her eyes suddenly widened, then she opened her mouth slightly. Are they upstairs? Although she did not finish her words, the three adults present knew what she meant. Maybe. Liu King nodded with a red face. Wow, they actually had sex in such a short time. Zif's eyes widened, and she said bluntly, what sound did you hear? Is the sound loud? Liu King's face became redder since she was shy, and then she was lost in thought. The room had good sound insulation and the door was closed, but she still heard it quite clearly though she stood at the door. Therefore, she nodded and spat a word, yes. Chapter 348, Preparing to Visit Auntie Tang. After hearing what she said, the three of them varied in their expressions. They all stopped talking, and a sudden silence fell down upon them. The whole room fell into a silence. The three people even could not help but gradually hold their breath. They listened intently, but they failed to hear the charming voice upstairs as they had expected. Feel it with their hearts. They found that the atmosphere in the room was really vague. Huh? Seeing the three people's expression, the little guy rolled her big clear eyes and muttered, I'm going to find Papa and Mama. Meng realized that they were talking about Papa and Mama, who probably were playing games on the upstairs. Meng's words broke the silence of the room. After the three of them looked at each other and found that they all just tried to listen to the voice, they burst into laughter. Zif embraced Meng quickly and said, No, you can't go up now. Come on, Auntie Fei will play with you. Well. Zhang Li coughed, stood up and said, I am going to turn off the heat. As she came to the kitchen and glanced at the pot, she said, it turned out to be stewed sweet bear, which is almost done. Let me turn off the heat first. In the bedroom on the second floor, the image in their mind did not appear, and Zhang Han just was pressing the acupoints with discipline. However, the affair developed more and more ambiguous. Ahem. Zhang Han lightly coughed. I can't find the acupoint accurately. What if I pull up your clothes? Okay. Xian gave a bland response. Since she was lying on her stomach, she slightly lifted her body at this point. Zhang Han grinned, grabbed the underside of her t-shirt, and then lifted it up to Xian's neck. Her entire back was exposed to Zhang Han. Oh, number. There was still a bra. Staring at her white tender skin, Zhang Han could not help but touch it with his palm. Hiss. Xian felt numb and itchy at one time. She also felt as if she had gotten a shock. Her face became much redder. Therefore, Zhang Han started to massage again. Xian found that his hands were very hot. After Zhang Han pressed for a few minutes, she felt the painful area became hot, and gradually, the pain disappeared. Instead, a dubious atmosphere rose. What if I massage your entire back? Well, this is indeed a hindrance, and I will unclasp it first. Zhang Han said to himself and put his hands on the buckles. 1, 2, 3, 4, zoom. As he finished unbuckling, Xian's entire back was completely exposed to Zhang Han. Zhang Han pressed his hands on it. In the beginning, he just massaged. Gradually, he started to fondle her back. Gradually, the temperature of the air around seemed to increase. Gradually, Xian turned around. Her beautiful eyes seemed to be moist, and then she reached out her arms, throwing them around Zhang Han's neck and kissing him. An indescribable affair, lasting for a long time, was happening. Another half an hour passed by. Zhang Han, who still felt unsatisfied, waited for 3 minutes at the door. Then Xian, with a ruddy complexion, came out. Except for the daily kisses and hugs, they did not do anything else. Zhang Li, Zifeng, and Meng were in the room. Therefore, even if Xian, who was shy at ordinary times, became more courageous, she did not dare to directly. Let's go. I cooked you stewed sweet bear, have some first and then we will go to the mountain. Zhang Han walked downstairs with Xian, holding her hand. Well, you're so sweet. Xian glanced at Zhang Han with a smile and said, by the way, Will you go to the movies at night with me? Great. What kind of movies do you want to watch? I'll buy the tickets later. Zhang Han replied. I heard that Alice in Wonderland was on. Well, let's watch this film. Zhang Han chuckled, and then he took out his mobile phone to book. He inquired about the movie schedule of the neighboring cinemas, only to find that the good seats were almost sold out. So, he called Zhao Feng, asking him to book a screening room. When they went downstairs and arrived at the exit, Zhang Li, Zif, and Liu King all looked over. They fixed their eyes on Zhang Han's and Ziyan's faces and found Ziyan's face was ruddy, which was exactly what they had expected. Tut, tut, elder sister Yan, is brother-in-law so durable? Zif said in a strange tone. It took nearly an hour for them from going upstairs to going downstairs, and 40 minutes had passed since Liu King went up to see them. What do you mean? Ziyan somehow responded. After finishing speaking and looking at Zif's expression, she froze. She suddenly reacted and blushed, then said in anger, Stop talking nonsense. Your brother-in-law just gave me a massage. I see, I see. You don't have to explain, elder sister Yan. Ha, 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 stroke while massaging. Zif laughed and said. Zhang Li and Liu King also burst out laughing. Huh? What's wrong? How do you come down so late? Meng Meng is waiting in suspense. Meng Meng said as she pouted. We'll go now. Ziyan ignored Zif, and came over to pick up Meng Meng. Don't you drink some first? Zhang Han asked in the kitchen. I'll taste it after coming back. Let's go to the mountain first. Ziyan said. Fine. Zhang Han nodded and walked out of the kitchen, taking the lead to go outside. Zhang Han drove the panda car as usual, and then they arrived at Mount New Moon. On catching sight of Meng Meng, Dai and Little Hai became very happy, running around Meng Meng. Dai's eyes also recovered, and now it was in high spirit. If they observed carefully, they would find that its mouth was still oily. If they looked more carefully, they could see some sheep pig's hair at the corners of its mouth. It was apparent that it slaughtered a sheep pig and enjoyed it after coming back. As the saying went, now that the host allows me to eat whatever I want, I'm going to taste foreign pigs. Zhang Han and Ziyan accompanied Meng Meng, playing in the pet area on the back hill for a while. Then the two of them sat on the mat brought by Ziyan and watched Meng Meng playing. At this time, the happiness bubbled up into Ziyan's heart. She and Zhang Han cuddled each other, leaning against Zhang Han's shoulder and enjoying the quietness of this paradise. Oh, by the way, Ziyan raised her head and said while staring at Zhang Han, the shooting will last about 3 days, and there will be a press conference on the 4th day. I will go to the mainland to shoot in the afternoon of the 5th day, therefore, I can take you to drop around that morning. Drop around? Where are we going? Zhang Han asked curiously. We won't go anywhere else, just on the new moon curve, not very far. Ziyan answered. Oh, okay. Zhang Han nodded. Let's visit Auntie Tang. I think that she will be scared as she sees you and Meng Meng. Ziyan said and grinned. Auntie Tang is your relative? Seeing Ziyan smiling, Zhang Han also asked with a smile. We're not relatives, but we're on good terms. She used to take care of me. Ziyan replied. At this point, Ziyan wanted to take Zhang Han to visit Hong Kitao's family, but Hong Kitao and other masters were pondering to visit Master Zhang of New Moon Bay. In the living room of the number 3 mansion, Hong Kitao, Tang Jie, and peak strength warrior Lin Shan were sitting together. Alas, I didn't expect that even Master Leng failed to persuade Gequan Long. He seemingly insists that Xilian and I should apologize to him in person. Tang Jie put on an anxious expression and sighed. Now the most powerful man we can find is Master Leng. Since he has failed, who can we ask for help? Hong Kitao was no longer calm, but took on a bitter face. Shall we try to ask the superiors of the National Security Agency for help? Tang Jie said tentatively. I have tried, but they don't want to get involved. Hong Kitao said as he shook his head. What should we do? Do we eventually send them over? Tang Jie said in anger. Of course not, I'll contact other friends and cast about for a way to solve it. Hong Kitao sighed. Brother Hong. At this moment, Lin Shan, who was sitting beside them, hesitated to say, what if we contact Master Zhang of New Moon Bay? As soon as he finished his words, Hong Kitao's eyes lit up. Then, however, he hesitated and said, Master Zhang is awesome, but can he defeat Gequanlong? I have no idea. Lin Shan shook his head and said, but as far as the situation on that day is concerned, Master Ge did lose in that battle. Although he claimed that he did not do his best, we did not know whether it was true or not. However, Master Zhang's strength is obvious. He defeated 5 masters within 5 movements, so I think he may be equal to Master Ge. Moreover, Master Ge also said that he would definitely take revenge in the future. I think this is also an opportunity. Now that they are bound to fight against each other, why don't we ask Master Zhang for help to solve this problem in advance? If Master Zhang wins, we won't have to be worried. If not, we can only find another way. That's right. Hong Kitao's eyes narrowed and he said, it will be feasible to ask Master for help. Shan, inquire about Master Zhang's residence and we'll visit him in tomorrow morning. Okay. On the other side, in a private mansion, Jiang Zongyao was weak and was lying in the bed of the room, still feeling sore all over. He had been treated by a heaven stage master with outstanding medical skills and used a lot of heavenly treasures, which were collected by himself for many years. They helped him recover in 3 days. However, there was also bad news. Like a bolt from the blue, after recovering, his cultivation would stagnate at the peak of the profound stage, and it would be 10 times more difficult than before if he wanted to be promoted again. Jiang Zongyao's mind was imbued with hatred. He had contacted a custodian of the National Security Agency, intending to punish Master Zhang. Rat-tat-tat. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and then a middle-aged man, with a square face, in his 40s came in. After seeing him, Jiang Zongyao said in a weak tone, Custodian Nan, you should help me. What do you mean? The middle-aged man said plainly, sanction Master Zhang. Jiang Zongyao said with full expectation, ha, ha, ha. The middle-aged man shook his head and chuckled. Jiang Zongyao faintly did not feel good when he saw his behavior. In fact, he had promised to help him last time, but it seemed that he did not intend to offer his help this time. He calmly said, your superior told me that you should adopt the policy of conciliation when you were on task, but the battle on Mount Yunding did take place. You're the only person to blame. My superior also heard about what had happened, and he told me this matter should come to an end. If you want to take revenge, you should figure out a way by yourself. The instant he finished his words, Jiang Zongyao's face changed over and over again. What does he mean? Under his gaze, the middle-aged man did not explain, but turned to leave. When he walked to the door, he stopped and turned his head slightly. He looked at Jiang Zongyao from the corner of his eye and said the last word, I still want to remind you that you'd better not provoke Master Zhang. You cannot afford to provoke him because of his identity. Then, he quietly left. Boom. It seemed that a thunder burst in Jiang Zongyao's heart. His mind was filled with those words. His identity. You cannot afford to provoke him. Chapter 349, Watching a Movie. On Mount New Moon, Zhang and Zhang Han were still sitting together, chatting softly. They were like 2 adolescents who had just started a relationship. However, they indeed just started their relationship a short while ago. Zhang was mostly talking, while Zhang Han listened to her quietly and responded from time to time. While speaking about work, Zhang's mouth curled up, and a sweet smile appeared on her face. She told Zhang Han that the 6 songs she had released were all top 6 on many music apps. Moreover, her followers on Weibo had already reached 20 million. The songs had been responded to favorably. Speaking of that, Zhang became energetic. She told him where to shoot at night, and it would probably be dawn when she was finished. "I'll wait for you." Zhang Han's words made Xian elated. Though she was happy deep inside, she still shook her head while saying, "Don't wait for me, you'll be tired if you don't sleep at night. Just give me the key before I go out to work in the evening. I've already put it on your keychain." Zhang Han shook his head and said with a smile, "Send me a message before you come back." "I know." Xian nodded obediently. She felt that Zhang Han was such a considerate man. After thinking for a while, Xian turned her head and kissed him on his cheek. Zhang Han could always get a lot of enjoyment from Xian's kisses. When her sexy red lips curled up and touched his, he could fully feel their softness and moistness. When they were kissing, he would feel a little cool. They didn't go back home from Mount New Moon until 5 o'clock. When they got to the restaurant, more than a dozen people had been lining up in front of the door who were very envious of Zhang Han's family. Many bachelors said, "I also want to have such a family, with a beautiful wife and a lovely baby." However, when they looked in the mirror, they would suddenly find that they were much less handsome than the boss. "Hi, boss. Boss, you went out to have fun? Meng is such a lovely baby." The regulars of the restaurant couldn't help greeting them. Zhang Han and Xian smiled and nodded, and then walked into the restaurant under everyone's gaze. There were also several people sitting in the restaurant, while Pearson and Stefan were sitting at Wang Qiang's table. After seeing Zhang Han, Pearson quickly got up and went over to him, whispering, "Boss, can Stefan use Uncle Wang's membership once? It was he who helped us get the truffles. He wanted to have a taste, so I brought him here." "Oh, okay." Zhang Han nodded. "Thank you, boss." Pearson laughed happily and returned to his seat, while Xian went to the second floor with Meng in her arms. Zif and the other two people who were sitting leisurely on the sofa on the first floor also followed. Zhang Han went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. At Wang Qiang's table, Stefan stared at the wine cabinet next to him and shook his head, saying, "Pearson, I read your report last time. If the food here is really as delicious as you said, with all the treasured liquor, it can be rated as a 3-star Michelin restaurant." Yes. Pearson forced a laugh. He had already felt that the boss didn't care about the title of a Michelin restaurant at all. Zhang Han prepared steaks for dinner. Steaks with black truffle sauce, fried egg with black truffles, a little steamed egg, and sliced white truffles were dinner on this day. Of course, he also made egg fried rice and noodle soup. He took the food to the second floor and almost all the people chose to start their dinner with the white truffle. Immediately, an indescribable aroma occupied the mouth, as if a lot of flavors had been mixed together. Tasting it carefully would be a great enjoyment to the taste buds. You get what you pay for. It was expensive because of its rareness, good taste, high nutritional value, and health function. If it tasted like SHT, nobody would like it no matter how rare it was. Today's dinner was a bit unusual for the clients, since they rarely ate such good food as black truffles and white truffles. Downstairs, because Pearson came back, 3 ordinary clients who had planned to eat at their restaurant changed their minds and took the food away. "This steak smells great, Stefan, have a try." Pearson didn't eat, but told Stephen next him to taste the food first. After hearing that, Stephen became very serious. Then he cut a piece of steak carefully and put it into his mouth. Feeling the tender flesh, the pure flavor, and the aroma of the black truffle, Stephen gradually widened his eyes. After chewing for several seconds, he closed his eyes again and immersed himself in that wonderful taste. After finishing it, he seemed to have become a sculpture, with his eyes closed and motionless. "How is it? When I first ate it, I was just like you," Pearson said with a smile. Stefan exhaled a long breath and opened his eyes, full of shock. He looked at Pearson and said in surprise, "This steak." Before he finished his words, Pearson interrupted him and nodded while saying, "Yes, this is Kobe beef. The top ingredient with an unbeatable taste. It's much more delicious than any steak I have ever eaten." "Wow, Oh my god, it's incredible, I can't believe it. What techniques were used to make such top-flavored steaks? Stephen couldn't stop praising it. So, the food in this restaurant is the best I have ever eaten. Pearson smiled while speaking. It seems that I'll come here more often from now on, Stephen said with emotion. Well, only with a membership card. Membership card? I'll just buy one. One card here costs 10 million. Poof, ahem, how much? 10 million. Forget it. Stephen felt a little dizzy. He looked around and just realized that the VIP members sitting there were all rich people. Then looking at Wang and his wife in front of him, he suddenly felt a little cautious. Since they can spend 10 million on a membership card of a restaurant, they must be extremely wealthy. But he did not know that the first 10 membership cards only cost 1 million. As people knew more about the restaurant, many people began to regret it. Why didn't I buy a card back then? 1 million is a 90% discount. After dinner, they took a break. At 7:30, Zhao Feng walked up from the first floor and said, "Boss, madam, the movie will start at 8 o'clock and it will take us 20 minutes to get there. Then let's go now." Xian got up and said. Zhang Han nodded and held Meng in his arms, saying, "Come on, let's go to the movies." "Okay, let's go to watch a movie." In fact, the little girl didn't have much interest in movies. What she was interested in was that while watching movies, she could eat popcorn and drink soda. Popcorn is delicious, sweet, and crunchy. Soda is also good. I'll burp once I drink it. Meng's cute and bright eyes were full of expectations. "We should go back to work." Zhang Li looked at the time and said, King, let's go downstairs together." "Okay." "Oh no, so I'll be left here alone?" Zif curled her lips. Then, Xian grinned and said, "How about you go to the movies with us?" "I won't, being a third wheel doesn't feel good. I don't want to see you guys being lovey-dovey." Zif quickly shook her head while speaking. "What's that nonsense? Xiao Feng is coming, too." Xian rolled her eyes to her and said, "I was planning to sit at the door." Zhao Feng's expression seemed to be saying, "I also don't want to be a third wheel. When there's some romantic scene in the movie and they want to kiss or do something, I would be embarrassed to sit beside them." Xian took a look at Zhao Feng and then looked at Zif. She snorted and said, "I'll leave you be." After finishing her words, she put on her cap and took the lead to go downstairs. Zhang Han's family got into Zhao Feng's Land Rover and sat in the back seats. Then Zhao Feng drove to the movie theater. Zhang Li and Liu King got in the white Maserati and went to Causeway Bay. The movie theater was near Zikeng district. When they arrived there, the movie was about to start. While they were walking to the corridor inside the hall, Meng looked at the bar counter with her big eyes and said anxiously, "Oh no, it's not right." "What's wrong?" Zhang Han asked. "We can't go in, we still need a lot of things." Meng stared at the popcorn behind the counter with her big bright eyes. Zhang Han glanced at that and couldn't help laughing and saying, "Do you want popcorn?" "Yes, I want it," Meng said while blinking her bright eyes. After thinking for a while, she also added, "I also want Coca-Cola." Ha ha ha. Zhang Han laughed and said, "Let's go to buy some." Originally, Zhao Feng would buy those things for them after they went in. However, seeing that the little girl was so anxious, Zhang Han decided to do it himself. "You're spoiling her." Xian smiled and rolled her eyes, but didn't stop him. It's okay to eat snacks once in a while. When they got to the counter, Zhang Han looked at the attendant and said, "2 buckets of popcorn and 2 colas please. For the popcorn, 1 medium and 1 small, and for the cola, 1 large and 1 small." Xian added, "Okay, 55 yuan in total, please wait a moment." The attendant quickly got the food ready after they paid. Finally, Meng was satisfied, holding a small-sized popcorn in her arms. They entered the movie theater. where there were not so many large sofas for couples. Only the three of them were there because Zhao Feng said earlier that he'd play on his phone outside. They took the 3D glasses and sat on the sofa in the third row, with Xian close to Zhang Han and Meng Meng on his legs. Soon after, the lights in the theater were turned off and the screen lit up. The movie began. It was the second installment of Alice in Wonderland. It told the story of the female captain, Alice, who was summoned to return to Wonderland. She stole the magic ball in order to save her friend, the Mad Hatter, and thus started an adventure about love and searching. When he heard that movie's name, Zhang Han felt it was a bit strange. He remembered that it was released in 2016 in his last life, with an average box office in Hua Nation, and a global box office of $1 billion. In this life, it was released in advance, as well as many other film series. Also, some films weren't released here. Zhang Han didn't care too much about those minor changes. The divine thunder over the sky made a strong man reborn, who had already passed level 9 tribulation. It broke the time barrier and made the world slightly disordered, which was a very normal thing in his view. Even if it was the end of the world at this place, Zhang Han wouldn't be shocked. After all, he felt incredible to have broken the time rules, let alone other things. But for the present state after rebirth, Zhang Han glanced at Xian. Then he smiled gently. Chapter 350, Shen King. Zhang Han felt very happy for the time being. He felt so lucky to have Xian and Meng Meng. He even felt grateful to the divine thunder over the sky. Generally, people would say, "Thank you for not killing me." But when it came to Zhang Han, the situation was, "Thanks to the thunder for striking me." Sometimes Zhang Han thought that if he got through the divine thunder over the sky and was lucky enough to have access to the immortal world, things would be different now. He was destined to be lonely, without a destination or purpose, like a walking corpse. But now, he had many goals. To live a simple, stable, and comfortable life with Xian, Meng Meng, and his parents was really great. What he needed to do at present was look for his parents, develop his own forces, and accumulate strength. When a certain level had been reached, he would choose to leave or stay here. That would be his decision to make. It would be good if the door of the world was still here. The door of the world was a kind of spirit treasure in the 9-level space system, which recorded the coordinates of a large number of places, not all of them, in the heavens and the earth. It included the places where 8 generations of mighty people had been to before. It could be said that the door of the world was handed down from the ancient times in the Cultivation World, and Zhang Han was its 9th generation master. There were a lot of coordinates inside when he got it. As for the many places that weren't in there, as long as he had been to those places, the coordinates would be recorded. Whenever he wanted to return to some place, he could use that. It was equivalent to a portable door, which was extremely convenient. The door of the world was one of Zhang Han's few treasures and also the most commonly used and practical spirit treasure. "I'm being too greedy." Zhang Han laughed bitterly deep inside, since he was already lucky enough to have been reborn with the Thunder Yang tree, but the 9-level spirit treasure, the door of the world, he was really asking too much. Even if it was at hand, he still wouldn't be able to open it with the strength at the chi refining stage. While he was thinking, the film's title had passed and the wonderful story began. With the medium-sized popcorn in her hands, Xian ate some and then handed some over to Zhang Han. When he ate it, he would occasionally lick Xian's slender fingers, but she didn't mind at all. Then she would pick up some and put it into her own mouth. She'd gotten used to it. They often kissed, so indirect kisses were nothing to them. That reminded Zhang Han that when he was eating roast duck, Xian hummed while secretly applying the mustard under the table for him to eat. That time, she also kissed him indirectly and she was very shy with rosy cheeks. A smile appeared on Zhang Han's mouth while he was thinking. Unconsciously, Xian and he had created a lot of memories. Meng Meng was extremely obedient at the moment, eating her popcorn carefully. "It's so sweet, yummy." The little girl was very happy. but was also a little worried that Mama would not allow her to eat a lot. Therefore, she was eating silently there. She didn't make any noises to attract Mama's attention. When watching the adventure story, Zhang Han and Xian were very quiet, while Meng Meng was livelier. After finishing the small-sized popcorn silently in Zhang Han's arms, she watched the movie for a while. However, she saw Xian's popcorn on the chair later. After finding that Mama was watching the movie carefully, she stretched out her cute little arm. Let me have a taste. While muttering, Meng Meng took some popcorn and began to eat happily. Zhang Han noticed what Meng Meng did, but he just smiled lightly without saying anything. Then, he continued to watch the movie with Xian, hand in hand. The movie finished at 10 o'clock, and it was nearly 11 o'clock when they got back to the restaurant. After Meng Meng fell asleep, Xian changed her clothes. I'm going to work. Xian went to the door, then turned and stood on tiptoe before kissing Zhang Han on his lips. Well, I will see you out. Zhang Han nodded. Coming downstairs, they found that Zhao Feng, and 6 security women, including Leng, were sitting at the round table. Hey, why are there so many people? Xian asked curiously. They are your full-time bodyguards. They will protect your safety when you go out in the future. Zhang Han smiled. Come on, I'll be safe with the company's staff. Xian licked her mouth. I'll be worried when you're away. Zhang Han wrapped his right arm around Xian's waist and said softly. His great care warmed Xian's heart. When they came near, Zhao Feng and the others stood up. Madam, Zhao Feng smiled and said, I will introduce them to you. This is Leng Yi, their leader, responsible for the safety of your trip. Hello, madam. Leng nodded and greeted her. Hello. Xian smiled slightly. This is Xuanhuan, this is Lan Sai, this is... Zhao Feng introduced the other 5 women in turn and they all greeted Xian. Then let's go. After the greetings, Xian took the lead and walked out. The group of people left the restaurant. Zif and Xian got in the Bugatti Veyron, while the other 6 women, including Leng, got in 3 black Mercedes-Benz S600s, respectively. The destination was the Avenue of Stars in the eastern part of Jiansha district, where several shooting projects would take place. The first car was driven by Leng, followed by the car driven by Zif and the 2 other cars. They left slowly under the attention of Zhang Han and Zhao Feng. Master, the renovation of the company's accommodation building has been completed. We can check in a few days after the test. The renovation of the nightclub still needs more than half a month. Should we hold an opening ceremony then? Zhao Feng asked. No, Zhang Han replied directly. Okay. Zhao Feng had guessed his master's answer. He smiled and said, right, the 3rd floor of the nightclub has been transformed into a large restaurant. Because the ingredients will also come from the mountain, how about we name it Meng Meng's Recreational Restaurant? 2. The membership cards can be used there. Okay. Zhang Han thought for a moment and nodded. After that restaurant opened, many clients would be attracted there, without so many people waiting in line. The current restaurant would be much quieter then. However, Zhang Han hadn't expected that things wouldn't develop as he wished. Many diners were still willing to line up in front of this restaurant and they would also say that what they ate was not food, but feelings. They liked not only the egg fried rice, but also Zhang Han's cooking, as well as his attitude and temperament. More importantly, many people had gotten used to seeing Meng Meng every day and occasionally seeing the beauty of Xian. Having meals here was a multi-layered enjoyment for clients' mouths, eyes, ears, and even their hearts. Apart from that, the meals for VIP members were rather cheap. For example, the black and white truffles they had earlier were counted as vegetarian dishes and it would only cost 200 yuan per serving. It was a great price for VIP members, since it was almost like having meals for free. However, as for the big restaurant on the 3rd floor over there, Zhao Feng prepared to adjust the price and make it profitable. I'll recruit several famous chefs later on. Zhao Feng knew that he should make some preparation, but he didn't know much about it, so he planned to ask the professionals. Liu Qingfeng had sent a management team over, each of whom was very obedient and had given pertinent suggestions. With such good stewards, Zhao Feng felt less burdened. He just needed to name the next goal, and in a short while, a few plans would be made. Zhao Feng was very satisfied and felt that it was the right way to be a leader. Zhao Feng told Zhang Han some other things. He said that the training on the beach was almost over and then those people would be trained at the company for more than 1 month. Training was a beneficial part, which was to give Ahu and other security members some professional training. After talking for a while, Zhao Feng left and went back to the company to rest. He barely stayed in the prior rented apartment now. Because he usually ran errands between the company and the restaurant, he chose to stay in the company's dormitory. The conditions were not so good, but he had stayed in much worse places, so it was nothing for him. Zhang Han returned to the restaurant and didn't lock the door. He went straight upstairs and sat down on the sofa. Since he had nothing to do, he took out his mobile phone and looked at it. There were only a few people's numbers in the contacts. There were only the numbers of Zhaofeng, Xuyong, Ziyan, Zhang Li, Wang Wan, and Chen Chenqing. Zhang Han didn't save all the previous numbers, nor did he intend to. Thus, only those people's numbers were saved. He rarely made phone calls, especially to the first 5 people, whom he often met. As for the last one, Chen Chenqing, Zhang Han did save his number and he remembered it clearly. After thinking about it, Zhang Han dialed Chen Chenqing's number. "Hello? The number you dialed is power off. Where did this guy go?" Zhang Han grinned. Chen Chenqing was his good friend and his playmate since childhood. Zhang Han was naughty and outgoing, while Chen Chenqing was introverted. Zhang Han always called the shots and took him out to have fun. Years later when they were older, Chen Chenqing went out for a while and started to hang out with Zhang Han again after he had returned. He was thin and usually very quiet, but he was rather brave. When Zhang Han was involved in a fight with 7 hooligans as a teenager, obviously he couldn't beat them. At that time, Chen Chenqing rushed up without hesitation. As a result, both of them were beaten up. Everyone has several good friends in their life. Chen Chenqing was Zhang Han's good buddy. However, 1 year before Zhang Han's accident, something happened to him and he suddenly left. In the beginning, they could meet once in 1 month, and then 2 months. 3 months. He had not appeared since 2 months before Zhang Han's accident. Chen Chenqing came from the Chen family in Shangjing, which was not so powerful as the Zhangs, but it was also a big family. He still remembered that 2 years after the accident, Chen Chenqing called him and only said 1 sentence, but Zhang Han always kept it in mind. "Brother Han, I'll join you to go back home and kill those who have bullied you." Zhang Han remembered that he almost cried back then, but he refused later on. After talking for a while, he knew that Chen Chenqing was somewhere abroad to deal with some important things. He said that he'd come back in 3 years and create a bright future with Zhang Han. "In the last life, you promised me a bright future. In this life, I will take you to cultivate." He did the math and found that it was almost the time Chen Chenqing said before. So he called to give it a try. His phone was still powered off. What is this guy doing? Doing business or studying abroad? Zhang Han thought about it and couldn't figure out anything, so he shook his head with a smile and stopped thinking. Then, he began to read the news on the phone casually. It was 11:30. Ziyan's 4 cars arrived at the destination.